6:03, I'm sorry, 6:03 on the clock. I'd like to call the Operations Services Committee meeting to order. Could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. McBride?
Yes.
Mr. Ewing? Mr. Riddle?
Present.
Ms. Callahan-Wozniak? Here. Ms. Leguizamo? Present. Ms. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Ms. Hannah?
Yes.
Okay, we have a quorum. If we could start with the item 3, the approval of the minutes of the September 21st meeting. Could I have a motion to accept those minutes, please?
Make a motion that we accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have any discussion on the minutes? Any changes? Okay, roll call, please.
Ms. Callahan-Wozniak?
Yes.
Ms. Leguizamo? Yes. Ms. Hannah?
Yes.
Mr. McBride?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Okay, minutes accepted for September 21st as presented. We're up to item 4. We have to do the Pledge of Allegiance? All right, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, Ms. Gonzalez, could you lead us in a Pledge of Allegiance?
Oh, sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, now I guess we can move on to discussion item 4, and that's the annual Row Health Life Safety Inspection Update. Mr. Moten, would you want to report on that, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Riddle. Good evening, board members, superintendent, staff, community. Before we get started, I just want to remind everybody, as you're coming up to the mic, we do have a box of wipes here. If you could wipe down the mic as you present or after you present, it would be appreciated. Our first agenda item is a status update report on our annual Health Life Safety Inspection. As you all know, this is performed every year by the Regional Office of Education. Dr. Mike Anderson used to do this in the past, but we have a new inspector now, and that's Mr. Ed Garver. We've asked Mr. Garver to come this evening and give you all a presentation on some things he's seen. He's done this the last 2 years now, in 2020 and 2021, and he's performed these inspections alongside Mr. Roberto Ochoa, who's one of our supervisors in the operations department. Mr. Garver?
Good evening. My name is Ed Garver. I'm from the Regional Office of Education. I thank you all for having me here today so we can go over some of the stuff that I've seen with the health life safety in the last 2 years here at District 60. First thing I'd like to do is I'd like to thank all the staff at District 60 for inviting me in, walking with me, being very receptive and very understanding of some of the things I was pointing out, which might have been different to them since Dr. Anderson was here than when I came on board. Next slide, please. Dr. Michael Karner is our new superintendent of schools. He was unable to make it today, so I just wanted to say that right off the top. Next slide, please. So, annual inspections in 2021, there was a total of 24 facilities that were inspected over a 2-week period. There was 224 different issues or violations that were noted during those inspections. Mainly, most of those notices were for what they call the administration and general purposes areas, where you have different matters such as safety plans, safety drills, crisis plans, moving on down the line to electrical systems, sprinkler systems, and so forth and so forth. So we noted that there was 244 violations throughout the whole set of the schools in the districts. And then it came back in 2021 and 2022, it was knocked down to 210. Mainly what happened with the 210 and the knockdown is the stuff that I was writing up during the first year being here were taken to heart by the staff. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of rooms that had well too much storage in it, causing fire issues that could happen in that room, which would be almost impossible to put out. They moved them out of the rooms. Electrical rooms that are not allowed to have any storage whatsoever had storage. They cleared them all out, made them presentable, and did everything they had to do there. There was also other issues, though, that, if we can go to the next slide, that I have set up here. These are your most common issues that were found in the 2021 and the 2022 comparisons, okay? So, hold open devices. What that means is if you have a set of doors that's supposed to be a fire door, they should not be held open unless they're on an automatic closing system. There was a few doors that were found that were held open by either wood wedges or just held open by a mechanism that's in the closer. That's not going to close automatically if a fire alarm does go off, which would in fact then not be able to help stop the smoke or the fire from moving throughout the school. A lot of those were removed. We did find a few this year, but it was a great improvement on that. Electrical systems. One of the big things I noted, and I think Roberto could acknowledge, is breaker panels in the hallway where kids have access. Most of them were unlocked. Kids can go right into them. That could be an issue. Most of them are locked this year. There were still a couple of issues, missing breakers, empty panels, some panels not labeled correctly, but great improvement again as we start moving forward on that. Fire alarm systems. My big thing, Roberto knew this as well, is strobes in classrooms. It's not really code. You go up to the code when the building was built. However, there's ADA regulations that continue onward. We should have strobes where everybody can see a visual if the alarms are going off. If you can't hear the alarm, you see a light flashing, then you'd be able to move. Now, that's going to be part of a 10-year capital improvement. I know it's going to take a lot of money. Sometimes panels need to be replaced, but that is an undertaking that should be looked at very closely. Yes?
Fire alarms. Are the fire alarms supposed to have covers on them?
They can have covers as long as they're easily accessed.
Okay.
The covers are mainly there, put there on the fire alarm, so like if you run into them, you're not accidentally setting them off. You have to lift the cover to make them go. Is that what you're talking about, the poles?
Yes, because we've been getting a lot of fire alarm pulls in the schools lately.
Right. Unfortunately, you can't lock them down because you have to be able to get to them. So the covers are mainly there so you're not accidentally setting them off. But it is deliberate if you lift the cover and give it a pull.
Thank you.
Another big issue that was happening in 2021 was the emergency lighting. Lights go out, you need some lighting, you need an emergency exit sign so you can see your way out clearly, easily, without any hassle or running into walls. What happens usually with the emergency lighting is it's the battery pack that goes bad. We did have a little bit of increase with emergency lighting this year, but I understand that sometimes battery packs go bad and they can go bad the week that I'm supposed to show up after the week they just tested them. So that's just something to keep an eye on. Next slide, please. The 10-year, I was talking about the 10-year capital improvement idea. Now, like I said, there's a lot of classrooms that are in the district that are missing strobes, hallways that are missing strobes. It's just horns, which is to code, but as far as ADA goes, it kind of falls back. It's kind of one of those weird in between a rock and a hard place. I recommend that you put strobes in all the areas that require a strobe. If your fire panels can handle it, that's also something that you'll have to call a vendor in to take a look at. Another thing is adding adding construction to areas that have fire warning signs. Meaning, if I have a pipe coming through a wall, say out of an electrical room, and it's open, you got a gap between the pipe and the wall. A fire can crawl right through there and continue on down the next hallway. So fire construction needs to be happening there. They make a foam that you can get in there, seal it up. I've seen some open ceilings that lead to a wood floor. We need to get some ceiling panels of some type up in front of that and construct it around so the fire just can't hit that wood floor and then continue to go up forward. Doors are another big issue that I've seen in the district. They are older doors. They are up to code when the building was built. However, they're not really good fire doors anymore. The glass will melt, it will go through, and it will come up into the next hallway. It's a large undertaking for doors. I understand they're about, what, $2,000 a piece to put a double door up that's fire rated. However, the doors that are in place in some of the schools that you have right now, and they are on the reports, won't even hold back too much smoke. So the hallways will start to fill up rather quickly. Next slide. So at this point, I'm going to say thank you and then ask if anybody has questions. Anything I can answer? Yes.
You mentioned a foregoing projects dealing with your sprinklers, right?
I'm sorry?
Just the strobes, I think you mentioned. Are they purchased separate or just one unit? I'm just wondering how much the strobes cost.
I'm not aware of how much they cost. When you buy a strobe
I
system?
asked the question because you said 10-year project, so I'm trying
No,
to...
on the 10-year capital gains survey,
Right.
capital improvement. It's not something you're going to be able to take over a summer without really looking at your budget.
So they're kind of costly, so to speak.
It can be, yes.
And did you check our fire extinguishers? Are they all up to code?
The majority of them are, except for where whoever the vendor was might have missed some. And that happens everywhere. It's just not here.
Okay.
I'll be a little sarcastic if you don't mind. We probably need a new school. I'm saying that because my mother's, she's gone now, but she's 93, and she went to that same school. So the school been there almost probably, 60 or 70 years? So we probably need a new school, but I guess we're doing the best we can to make it with what we got. Thank you.
Well, and that's where I was going to come in my last final statement is, considering the age of the schools that you guys have, your maintenance staff and everybody involved is doing an outstanding job at keeping it up to date as best as they can. It's quite an improvement over the last year till now.
All right, that's good to hear.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to our staff, yeah.
So can I follow up a question?
Thank you for that
Mr.
report,
Moulton.
Mr. Garver.
No, with you.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Hannah.
Okay, in terms of the fire alarms and the fire alarms that are being pulled at the high schools, I know there were 2 alarms today and several the past week. What are we doing? I know that at one point, all of the fire alarms, they had the ink on it. Do we still have that, where the ink is still on the alarm? So if a student pulls the alarm, it's going to be evidence on their hands.
Thank you for the question, Ms. Hannah. So just to make sure everybody heard that, what Ms. Hannah referenced was historically whenever we've seen concerns with some of our fire alarm pulls being pulled manually when it's not an emergency, we would put ink that you could only see with a UV light, right, to identify the individuals who may be doing that. And that's something that we have looked into. We've looked into it in the past, looked into it currently. Also managing some of our video surveillance to kind of see where the trends and patterns are in the locations in the buildings where that situation is occurring. I don't want to get into specific individual situations, but the ink, the dye that you're referencing is something that we're looking into as well.
So it's no longer on the alarms, you're saying?
So we put it on if we notice that there's a concern or an issue that's persistent. We don't put the ink on every single pull station in the district. Like it's not a standard item we just leave on there all the time. We put it on there when we start to notice patterns.
Okay, and my follow-up question to that is, with the false alarms, is the district getting charged for the false alarms?
So I would
And
say
if you don't know,
Yeah.
could you find out accurately?
we will inspect that. We haven't seen any billings for that, but we'll confirm if there's a potential delay in billing, if there's going to be a charge for those. But we haven't seen any charges to date for anything that's happened this year.
Okay, because I'd like to know if we're getting charged for the false alarms.
Thank you.
We'll come back with that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Moulton. Oh, go ahead, Mr.
I had brought it to the superintendent's attention. I just happened to be over on Washington Street today when we had an alarm issue. And I want to suggest to you that when the kids come out, they hit Washington Street, and most of the security was telling them to get out of the street, but it was so cluttered where they were so close to each other, they kind of halfway had to step in the street. But it'd be my suggestion, the west side of the building, you got a big open field fenced in there. I would start deterring kids many as you can in that area, and that area was I thought was large enough to hold the amount of kids that I seen on
East side.
the east side of the building. So just for people rest. Then plus you got them fenced in too, and it is away from the building. Just a suggestion.
Thank you for the recommendation, Mr. McBride.
Good suggestion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moulton. Did you want to touch on briefly the informational items in item 5?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Mr. Riddle. So we have several informational items for your review this evening. Please ask questions. Several of these items we're going to be asking for board approval at future board meetings. We do have staff and consultants in the audience this evening if there are any specific questions. I would like to touch on item 5A. This is statement of work number 2 for the Johnson Controls contract that the board approved this summer. Recently, you approved statement of work number 1. Statement of work number 2 is ventilation improvements at McCall, Oakdale, Miguel Juarez, and Waukegan High School, Washington campus at a total value of $3,021,083. We are going to bring that forward at the board meeting next week. That is within our budget, and as you can see, we've increased our diversity participation even higher than our statement of work number 1, as well as our goal of 12%. And I would just say we do have representatives, the operations staff, and Johnson Controls here today if there are any specific questions.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Hannah.
What does it mean under statement of work number 2, project summary? Equitable improvements to multiple school facilities, project maximum costs, $10,757,815. What does that mean?
Yes, ma'am. So when we originally brought forward the proposal to the board, the total value of the maximum project cost was that dollar figure, $10,757,815. So we're bringing this forward in multiple statements of work, chunking up the schools. We originally had 16. We brought 4 the last time. We're bringing 4 this time. So really what we're telling you is that we're addressing the 16 sites with the highest priority needs from a ventilation and mechanical standpoint. This statement of work is at 4 sites and valued at a little over $3 million. That $3 million is within the $10.7 million.
Right, okay, yeah, but I'm more looking for the equitable improvements. That's what I'm asking. What are the equitable improvements?
So the equitable improvements, if you look at, there is an attachment on the agenda item that has a summary of task order number 2, and this is the section where we're looking at the highest priority needs at these sites. So instead of us saying all schools are going to get the same mechanical improvements, we're only addressing the highest priority needs at the sites identified with the equipment that's either outdated, needs to be improved for ventilation purposes. I'm sorry, Mr. White, if you're trying to assist me, it's a different attachment that's got a blue color coding on the board agenda item.
First one. The first one.
Did you have a question?
Should be the summary of task order.
That's it.
Yeah, the first attachment. Yeah, if you could zoom in, please. So the equitable approach is really a terminology we're using, again, to say we're not doing everything the same at every site. We're individualizing, customizing the supports that's needed from a mechanical standpoint at each of these locations. And we have the description of each item at each site broken down on this particular attachment.
Yes, Ms. Gonzalez, go ahead.
Mr. Mo, and then I guess Charlotte can go. She had her
Okay.
hand up too.
Oh, okay.
My question is, is the timeline for these projects going to interfere with our school year? Because I know at the beginning of the year, some schools had to push back or cancel their open house, and I just don't want the kids or the families to be, in the middle of these improvements.
So we're not anticipating, and the gentlemen who are here can correct me if I'm wrong, we're not anticipating any impacts to the school environment. We don't want to impact the learning environment. The learning environment and the educational process isn't going to impact the schedule of this work. Originally, when we reported this, we said that we're anticipating going through the end of summer of 2022 for the physical work to be completed. A lot of that had to do with the long lead times based on production delays last year due to COVID. So we want to get the work completed. We're not going to impact the learning environment. The learning environment isn't expected to slow down this work either.
Ms. Callahan Wozniak, go ahead.
I'm looking at the charts or the graphs or the floor plans of the schools, specifically Washington High School. And, it looks like you're changing out some of the rooms and not others. Why is that?
You want to address that? I'm going to ask Mr. Baker and Mr. Van Ness from Johnson Control to talk to some of the specific technical items that you're, help me explain those items.
Yeah, shouldn't he be telling us?
So generally speaking, it's a testament to what the district's already done.
Okay.
Some of the areas have already been upgraded. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. So again, repeat myself, it's a testament to what these guys have already done, keeping the buildings up to code and up to speed. All the areas that need to be addressed. So those floor plans only address the areas that needed improvement. So there's various rooms where there's new ductwork, new VAV boxes are being installed, and some already had it essentially. So that's kind of the general gist that hopefully makes sense. So the term equitable? Yeah, so yeah, that's...
No, I just, it just seemed odd that, like on the second and third floor, you've done the ones on the face of the building and on Jackson Street, but all the ones in the middle, which I think would be the harder air ventilation areas, are not addressed. So it was...
Yeah, please.
I think what you'll find if you study those plans and walk around the school with them is that many of the areas have already been completed and have wonderful ventilation.
That's great.
And Johnson Controls has surveyed these rooms and said, these are the ones that need attention so that they're all wonderful.
Okay.
And that's why parts of the plans are coded one way or the others, because there's more work being done in some rooms than in others to make them all
Makes
at the
sense.
same level.
Just wanted to make sure that wasn't down the plan.
Any other questions on this?
Yeah, just in terms of the air ventilation,
Yes, sir.
are we making sure that all occupied spaces have air ventilation? And
Yes, we
yes.
should have that now. And what
Okay.
they're working on is improving the systems that we have, because quite frankly, some of them are poor. And they need to be upgraded to bring all the rooms up to that standard. And that's why there's different levels of work going on in different parts of the schools.
Okay. If I could, Ms. Anna, are you finished?
Yes.
On that? Yeah, if I could ask a question. We heard in public comment, I think here a week or two ago, and also it was mentioned at our CUBE conference, one of the areas that I attended, was talking about CO2 levels. And have we done anything in monitoring CO2 levels? Because I understand that impacts student learning. Are we measuring the CO2 levels in any of our buildings in the classrooms?
Thank you. Yes, sir, we are. Since 2013, when we added 12 additions to our elementary schools, we put a system in our Johnson Controls Medisys program that measures the CO2 levels and increases airflow when they get above 700 parts per billion.
Okay.
There's a trigger level that that opens the dampers and brings in more fresh air.
Good.
Ramps up the fans to make sure that we are maintaining a low level of carbon dioxide in the rooms.
Okay. I wonder if we could
We'd
get,
like to spread that to more areas too, so.
right, I wonder if we could get, if the board could maybe get a report, would that be possible, just to, that what you're just talking about, so that we could address maybe that concern if it's raised again? That we're looking at it, that we're
We most
monitoring
certainly
it?
can.
That's right. Pardon me?
We most certainly can. If you'd like to pick a school rather than just throw
What?
a general note, we could show the trending curve that shows where the levels are at any given time and how the fans reduce that. And
Maybe something informational in a general way, because we don't really know too much about CO2 levels. And I mean, I presume Johnson Control knows
these
that
guys do.
the machines are set at a certain, I mean, those ventilators open at a certain, when the CO2 level you're talking about gets too high for learning and stuff, that the ventilators
Exactly.
open, just informational for us. so
We
that
can show you trending of what happens at different times of the day. You'll see when the students arrive in class and they've just got off the bus and they hit all kinds of activity and they're all huffing and puffing when they first sit down, and the CO2 levels in the classroom will rise. Then the dampers will open and the fans turn on and they bring in fresh air and that level goes way down again.
Okay.
And that's built into the program so that we maintain a comfort level that is suitable for best learning.
Right, okay, so we were addressing it. That's what I guess I wanted to know. Is that what the board wants to know? Do we want to get a little more information on that or no?
I'm interested, and that's going to piggyback on my question.
Uh-oh.
I know we have classrooms that are below grade.
That are below.
Below grade.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, and the radon level, have we ever checked that? Is that on you all's radar to check?
We have checked that in the past just to verify that we don't have any elevated levels.
Okay.
But we move air around in our lower levels constantly to prevent that from building up.
Okay, okay. And
But that's a
so-
good question.
Okay, so that shouldn't be a worry then.
It shouldn't be a worry, no.
Right,
Okay,
okay.
thank you.
It's more
Thank
in
you,
a place where you don't have activity and movement and ventilation, like a residential basement. You might find it to accumulate there where it doesn't have a lot of airflow.
Okay, okay.
But in our
Good.
schools, they have plenty of airflow going on to prevent that from accumulating.
Okay,
Great, thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Kruckelberg. We all know that,
So again,
ventilation
if
is.
you need one school to
Sure.
make an example of in terms of like giving you that report, maybe
Yes,
that makes
yeah,
most
pick a
sense.
school that you've worked on and maybe just give us some kind of, a little bit of information
Sure.
about the CO2 levels and how that's, what Mr. Kruckelberg just talked about, so that we can get some idea of how that even works, that your mechanical controls are regulated such that as the CO2 levels rise, it brings in more fresh air, especially in the wintertime when we're concerned that windows can't be opened and, we're heating our buildings. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, since you're doing this extensive work at Washington campus, would that be one to look at?
Washington campus,
The high school?
don't believe.
Well, our work isn't complete. It's not going to be done for a while, so that may not be the best place to show
that
you
would
right
show
now.
us some bad rooms and some good rooms, right?
Essentially, your current state in Washington, and we can do some we've already completed, they've completed prior, so it wouldn't be Washington though.
Good, good. Not too technical stuff, just a little
Yeah,
bit so that we can understand it. Great. Thank you, gentlemen. Yeah, not this kind of stuff. Okay. Not a great stack. Okay, thank you so much for what you're doing. We appreciate that so much. We know that it's important, the ventilation in our schools for our kids' learning. Thank you. And our board president just came in, so board president, we are now at item 10.5, GPS tracking.
Yes.
Any questions on this item 5B?
when are we going to have that task completed?
So, Ms. Hannah, it is noted here, based on the lead times we're seeing, we're anticipating this will go into effect January 1, 2022. You will see next week at the board meeting, Board Policy 3509, first reading, and second reading at the board meeting to follow.
And will this be on all vehicles?
So this would be on all district-owned or leased vehicles.
Okay.
And as you can see on the description, we're looking to use it for several items, setting up boundaries in the district boundaries, vehicle diagnostics, maintenance-related items, and then obviously we can check if there's any concerns regarding any tickets or traffic violations, anything like that.
And does that include vehicles that are also being used for district business that may not be in the fleet?
So this would be for any vehicles the district owns or we lease. We're not going to be putting this on any personal vehicles, if that's what you're asking.
Okay.
All right.
Any questions on C?
Well, I got one question. Will that help our insurance?
That's a good question. We really didn't go through the insurance route because we wanted to make sure that we're protecting the assets that we have, Mr. McBride. We can certainly ask that question.
Ask the
We
question
we're
because the city has the same system.
Right.
And because of the fact that you have that, you eliminate running stop signs, you eliminate speeding, red camera lights, and all those different things, especially the speeding. Because as soon as you go with the station limit, wherever it's at, somebody should notice it right away.
Sure.
Sure.
Well, we can notice it ourselves as well.
That's what I mean.
Right.
You should have a system in-house where when something does occur, or you out of the boundaries, or you in a 35 mile an hour and you doing 45, somewhere, I don't know if it's security here, but it should go off right away.
Yeah.
And then that person should be called in and say, hey, why were you doing that?
So thank you for mentioning that. The system that we should have is what's on this agenda item. That'll allow us the ability to do that, and it'll be automated.
Any questions on C?
Yes.
Go ahead, Ms. Leguizamo.
Mr. Bolton, for C, I was wondering, is that price inclusive of like COVID-related items?
Yes.
It is. So let's just say COVID goes away, right? And we no longer need that. And all of the items that are currently in that system, we have control of all of that information and have it within our records outside of Crisis Go? Or do we have to depend on them forever for that information? For example, I think that we provided our COVID cards as an example. So just trying to understand how that goes, if that cost will vary when that leaves.
Sure. So.
And can I piggyback on her?
Yes, ma'am.
And when the COVID is over, because this Crisis Go, the original intent was for the active shooter process, will we continue to have that function with this Crisis Go?
Yes, ma'am. So the COVID-related features are a separate feature. The agenda item before you this evening is just for that. The safety plan for the COVID-related items. The safety plans, the anonymous reporting, the features that are with Crisis Go for those items are going to remain. Ms. Leguizamo, I will need to verify because there shouldn't be any fluctuations in costs or any additional pricing for us to be able to access that information whenever COVID is over. But at this point in time, it is mid-October. Right now, our contract goes through the end of December. We're anticipating, particularly with some vaccinations hopefully coming available to our elementary age students and tracking some of this information. We're anticipating we're going to need to do that beyond January 1st. So this is intended to get us through the spring semester as well as the summer school season through August 31st.
Ms. Vukovic?
Could you tell us what you're talking about? We can't see that.
Oh.
So you're discussing
I'm sorry.
a topic, but we don't know what A and B and C are actually about. The previous one.
Sure.
About vehicles or something. What was that?
I apologize, and maybe, I don't know if we have the ability to make the screen a little bit larger. What we're referencing is the Crisis Go Safety iPass feature that we use for self-certification, tracking vaccination status. We did a 6-month agreement with them that ends on December 31st. So what the pandemic preparedness team and administration is proposing is that we extend that through the end of summer school, because we anticipate we're going to need to track those items beyond December 31st.
And what were the two previous items we discussed?
So the 2 previous items were GPS devices on district vehicles, and the item before that was the Johnson Controls mechanical improvements at 4 schools. Thank you.
I have a question. I had a question for the Crisis Go Safety iPass. Just so that I understand what's like the language that's in the item. Amazon is the web-based application that supports Crisis Go.
Yeah.
I don't know if Dr. Cuevas can confirm that. And I'm just looking at ahead of, whenever we're going to end the contract. Not that we're, obviously the board will have to approve it. But is the vaccination records not something that we can do in-house that we expect from students anyway? Because, with like when students need their health records in the school, is that not something that we can incorporate from those documents? Or I'm just looking like toward the future, like if
another vaccination.
it's just another record. So can we have that in-house as opposed to paying someone $14,000 to hold student information? You know what I'm saying?
Good evening. In the Infinite Campus system, that's our student management system. That's the central repository for all the student records.
Right.
Crisis Go basically is another solution that is being used for emergency, for communications. And when you mention Amazon, so Amazon, they don't support Crisis Go. They're just a hosting company where Amazon hosts all the systems for Crisis Go. So Crisis Go, they have different components. So you can receive alerts. You also can see the maps in the case of an emergency of where you're at. And also you can report what is your condition, if you're safe or if you're in danger. So Crisis Go also have different functionalities of student records. Student records are managed in Infinite Campus.
Right. Okay. So it just has those other features that would partially be beneficial to have in a crisis.
For in the case of emergencies, yes, Crisis Go is basically the tool that we need to establish communications. And also, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Moden, Crisis Go is also connected with local enforcement, like the police department, and also other fire department and other emergency services. So they're all integrated when it comes to communications.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry, to add on to that, if I'm not mistaken, correct me, Ms. Gonzalez, but the question is, we're taking this in order to have the component to be able to get vaccination records. What I thought Ms. Gonzalez was asking was, we already can tell you what kids are vaccinated with all the current vaccines. So why would we need another system instead of just housing it in the current system that we have in order to make sure that students have their physicals and their vaccinations for all the vaccines that have existed prior to the COVID vaccine?
If it makes sense, is it okay to maybe say because I'm just thinking about like security wise, and I know the verbiage right here says that we're tech safety, but is it possible for us to keep the record so that there's no breach potentially, and then just do the contract so that we get those services?
So all student data is owned by the school district. So basically, if we terminated any contract with any vendors, we own the data. So we have the rights to download that data and save it on a different location.
Yeah, so I understand owning it, but maybe just...
We already have, I think what she's saying, we already have a system.
Like, will we be expected for everyone to update? I mean, I know we had asked because our contract is until December, and I remember putting in my information, like, yes, I'm vaccinated, taking the picture. But is that something that we're gonna expect to be the whole duration of our next renewal?
So when it comes, I just want to make sure, Ms. Hannah, that I answer, the question. When it comes to the student records for the vaccination information, that's a module that Crisis Go provides. That information is also integrated with our Infinite Campus system where we manage the information. So I just want to make sure we're using a third-party system to integrate it with our system so that the school nurses and the different buildings, when they provide that information will go to a central repository.
Okay. It works more like a vehicle.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Dr. Cuevas.
All right, thank you. And then we're going to go to 5D. And then Ms. Vukovic, I know you had a question. They're not going through the entire presentations. We were attempting to expedite some of this work, so everything either has an attachment or should be clearly visible. So they're not going through the entire presentations as if I say the item, and then if a board member had a question or if a community member had a question, they can raise it and ask it. So that is the different model. So I do apologize that wasn't made clear. So item 5D, which is the Safety Department updates and initiatives. Ms. Leguizamo.
Mr. Moten, so one of the questions is related to the blue light. I believe we had approved that purchase a few years back, maybe a little bit, maybe 3 years ago, give or take. And I thought that we already had that purchase in-house and we were just waiting for installation. Do we know if that's the case or has the item not been purchased?
Thank you for the question, Ms. Leguizamo. The item has not been purchased. What we did was we submitted that as part of a grant in 2018, a grant that we unfortunately did not get approved for. And then we, at the time, elected to not move forward. However, based on what we've seen as we've come back and we pulled our old documents together, looked at some of the rationale for why we provided that to our grant submission in the first place. We believe that it is an initiative that we need to investigate right now and prioritize locations that may benefit from those blue lights. And for everybody's knowledge, the blue light system is something, if a school building goes into a hard or soft lockdown, that means nobody should come in and out of the building. This would be a visual aid, and we would have to train staff and parents on this, but it would be a visual aid on the exterior of the building for people to know schools in hard lockdown, don't try to come in. So that's why that initiative is on there.
It was definitely pre-COVID. And I noticed that this also included a vulnerability assessment. Do we have an ETA when that might be completed? Or
Sure.
the first assessment,
Thank
right?
you. I'm going to ask Mr. Wilson if he could come speak to that. Thank you.
Good evening. Yes, the vulnerability assessment. So normally we do them every year. There, you see that tactical site? So that is completed every year at every building. We haven't brought an outside group in since we did the Broomsgram in like 2018. We are exploring that.
Okay. I do know, speaking with Chief Wallace of Waukegan Police Department, he did mention that they do offer that type of training as well. Just putting that out there as information as we've been talking about school safety and vulnerabilities throughout our school systems. So appreciate that. And then the last question I have is trying to find the wording here because I saw it yesterday when I was reading it, but it is whenever an emergency occurs and there is a type of evacuation out of the building and you need to pair up a parent or a guardian with the student.
Yes, the reunification.
Unification, there you go.
Yes.
The unification process. So I know that whole process has always been very chaotic. Just really wanted to get your ideas, what you're thinking about so far, what that's going to look like. Are you planning on improving that, or you're just going to use the same systems that we have today?
No, we're going to practice a drill. Right now, currently, what we're doing is we're getting everybody trained on NIMS. We're getting incident command system in place again. And once we get everyone trained, we're going to do tabletop scenarios, and then we're going to try for early spring to do a reunification drill. We haven't done one in probably about 3 years.
Okay. I know one of the ideas that I had, or I spoke to some people before, was potentially adding RFIDs onto our school IDs, which can help track students where they're at throughout our facilities. So I don't know if that will help out with unification or not, but it was just something I just wanted to bring up to the board.
Okay,
so thank you for that, Board President. Those were all my questions.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Wilson, this is a very important topic. So with the superintendent's concurrence, I'm going to ask that we actually run through the presentation at our board meeting next week, just so parents in the community is aware of what items have been updated in order to address the concerns. And so this will also allow the community to see the presentation. If they have specific questions, they can present those so we know that they were addressed. So I appreciate the work that was done. There's a lot of good content in here. And so I would love the opportunity for the community to hear and see what has been done to improve the safety concerns throughout the district. Go ahead, Ms. Hannah.
Okay, I'm wondering about the SROs in the district. Or are they in the district? I know that Mr. Riddle and I had asked for a status update of the SROs situation. And can you kind of enlighten us?
Currently, they are not in the district. The police department is training some staff. Once they get trained, we expect the SROs to return.
And so the contract that we have with the police department is still ongoing? I mean, is it still effective? Well, in effect. If they're not in the district, if the SROs have not been in the district, are we still honoring the financial compensation of the contract? That's what I want to know. Are we still paying for the SROs to be in the schools, but they're not in the schools?
Yeah. Thank you for the question, Ms. Hannah. So we currently do have a contract with them, but we are not paying for any services we're not receiving from them physically being in the schools all day. However, there are several components of those intergovernmental agreements that are still in effect. We still have property monitoring that takes place 24 hours a day. They're still required, when they do come on property, to abide by our rules and procedures if they need to conduct official business while on site. We also have, as a supplement, our Waukegan Police Department gang unit, as well as our patrolmen at the school sites where we have the SROs to support us. The Waukegan Police Department struggled with the impacts of staffing just like we did and every other employer in the country during COVID. Several retirements, several resignations, transfers, etc. So we are still supplementing those services. Those IGAs are still in effect, but we don't want just anybody in our schools. We want to make sure they have the proper training certification, especially the juvenile certification, before they go back onto campus full time.
Yeah, I talked extensively with Chief Walls about the SROs, and he explained why they're not with us. But my concern is the financial impact of that contract. And if they're not here, we shouldn't be paying them.
And we are not, Ms. Hannah.
Okay.
Thank you. Item E, 457B, Deferred Compensation Plan. Any questions on this item?
Yeah, what somebody need to explain what all of this is.
Yeah, so currently we have a 403B plan within the district. What we're looking to do is expand opportunities. And I'll ask Ms. Polk to come up as well, as she's been working with Mr. Clary. But we want to expand opportunities for staff members to save towards retirement. This would not be something the district would contribute to, but this would provide an avenue for any employee in the district to hold something back as a retirement deferred compensation plan. This is basically just another offering for them to save towards retirement. So we're looking to implement this with our current provider of our 403B plan.
And this is for all employees, certified, non-certified.
Yep. Go ahead.
Board President, board members, superintendent, and community members, yes, this is for all employees. Part-time, full-time, substitute, all district employees would be eligible to participate in this plan.
Okay. And there's no financial impact for the district.
There is no contribution on the part of the district. It would all be employee contributions.
And then are they going to be investment funds?
On the part of the employee, yes. And we're currently working with Mr. Clary on the plan documents to ensure that the employee's best interest are taken into consideration when we deal with our third-party administrator.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's good.
And
Yes,
who
ma'am.
will pay for the fees for the audits and stuff for that?
No, ma'am. Those will be transferred to the investment companies. And again, I'm working very closely with Mr. Clary. We've had multiple conversations today with our third-party administrator to make it very clear what our expectations are. So the documents are in draft currently until we can negotiate the terms. Did I miss something? Yes.
Ms. Polk, I'd just like to say thank you for that. I worked for the county for 33 years, and they had a 457B, and I was in it. It was very good. And you could put as little as you want or as much as you wanted up to these maximums here of $19,000 a year. So that's a great plan, I think.
And
Thank you. Thanks for working on that.
One more.
Go ahead, Ms. Allen.
And the communication and clarification to our staff, okay, that I'm sure that's forthcoming with the approval of, once we approve this. And all employees will get the information, what it is, how it works, and all that.
Absolutely. Really, that's what Mr. Clary is working very closely with me to ensure that the employees are aware of what their options are. We actually have a website that I'm working with staff right now to get posted on our district website as it relates to our 403B and all of the providers that are available, as well as what the fees and the terms are.
Right.
And so we're matter of fact, today, trying to post that for the 403B, and we're planning to shadow that for the 457.
And please be considerate of lay people's comprehension.
Yes,
You know
we'll
what I
surely
mean.
try to take that into consideration,
Yes.
but if there are any questions, they can certainly call my office, Mr. Clary's office, and then also our provider. We'll put them in contact with them so that we can answer whatever questions they might have.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Polk, could I just suggest too, I don't know if it's possible, but I know the county did, I was in the pre-tax 457. After I left, they started one that was like a Roth, that was an after-tax, which is even better, because then you have, it's basically a Roth IRA instead of, you can convert it to a Roth instead of a traditional IRA when you leave.
In our planning document, we have both of those selected, but again, we're in the preliminary stages to to make sure that what we're asking them to do for us is in the best interest of the employees.
Right.
But we, right now, have both of those items checked.
Good. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Yes.
Mr. Vukovic?
I'll just yell from here.
Go for it.
Along the same lines with your current 403B.
Yes.
My wife's a retired employee and had that and kept it in the 403, and in July of this year attempted to take some funds out. Now, going back 13 years ago, went from the approved list that the district puts out and found a broker that was located in Waukegan, reputable name and all that. So what with that, the broker has since moved to Highland Park and no longer wants to talk to people, just go call the company direct. She's been trying since July to get this money. It just gets the runaround. Now, everybody here is going to be, the third-party administrator signed off the next day. There were things here, no problem. But you really need to look at who you're using or recommending, because this group is an issue. I mean, we had a project that we were looking to fund and couldn't get the money, so we made a change, and I went to my IRA, sat down at the computer, and the next day the money was in our savings account. But this group here, they send us an email saying, it's been approved, the check is on its way. Looking for the check? Oh no, that's not the case. It's the stuff on there is unbelievable, and we'll probably be filing a report with the proper state officials because it's not fair to employees.
So please, I heard that, we heard that, and we need to be considerate of, that the companies that we are using.
Reputable.
Yes, if I could get more information on that, I literally heard something about that today from Mr. Luosa, but if I could speak to you offline to find out more specifics.
Yeah, that's important. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Awesome. Okay, so we're now in reports.
Thank you, Mr. Ewing. So there are several reports for your review. None of these items require future board action, but we wanted to provide as much information as possible as we're gearing up for winter and spring as well as summer season in some of our departments, particularly in operations. If there are any questions on the reports, please ask. We also have our standard monthly financial reports as well.
Yeah, can we just go out of order?
Well, I'll take them one at a time so we can, if the community has a question. So A, Division of Operations Responsibility Information, that's just related to operations responsibilities and goals. Is that correct, Mr. Moe?
Yes, sir, Mr. Ewing. We just wanted to provide this as information. These are some high-level items we think can improve efficiency within the district, within the 5 departments in operation. So we just wanted to provide that as information so you know what the departments are working on throughout the school year.
B was our fresh fruits and vegetables. Go ahead, Ms. Anderson.
Yeah, the district drills, and I mean, are we still having our fire drills and our the tornado drills? And I'm talking about with the students. Are we doing that still?
Yes, ma'am.
It was in the safety department updates, the chart shows which ones we've done already.
Okay, I didn't look at that. Thank you. Okay, because that's very important for kids to understand. Okay.
All right. B, our fresh fruits and vegetables grant. Information is there. Thank you again to all those who contribute to that grant. It's tremendous support for our students. C, tentative capital improvement preparation schedule.
What does that mean?
There are if you look at the screen, Ms. Hannah, it has all the different projects that are being planned at the committee meetings, when bids are due, just high-level dates
So this is the committee?
So Ms. Hannah, this is just a roadmap so you know and can anticipate when we may be coming to the board for critical approval items. This is not a list of projects, this is the schedule. The committee is currently meeting and is going to provide recommendations per this schedule.
Is there a board representative on
Yes.
that?
Me and Mr. Riddle.
Oh, okay.
D, legislative update, House Bill 2412, advertisement for bid. It's actually important. It's the Minority Public Notice Act, which was signed August 27, 2021 by Governor Pritzker. Go ahead, Ms. Wozniak.
Have we earmarked a newspaper that we're going to advertise in?
We have reviewed this with 2 local newspapers, so we do have some thoughts on that. The reason why we wanted to note it here specifically is that, as you can see based on the schedule from the previous item, we anticipate we're going to have these items out to bid before the January 1 required date. So we are currently working with our architects right now to make sure we have avenues in English and in Spanish, as well as the Lake County News Sun and the local newspaper per the requirements, so that we can do this now.
And you're going to do, kind of go off the major mediums.
Yes, ma'am. So the local newspaper would be something that's Waukegan-based, county-based. Specifically, we would like Waukegan-based. We're also going to be providing the audio, verbal translation services for all of our meetings, whether it's pre-bid meetings for contractors, the contractor workshop, which is also on the reports item. I believe it's the next item, item E. We're going to be doing that dual language as well.
Right, but what I'm saying in terms of advertising, okay, there are other newspapers that are out in the community. Okay, and I'm hoping, due to concurrence of the board, that we hit all of them for the advertising. Yeah, I mean, we have the newspapers in our lobby. Are we going to use them?
Yeah, so one of those examples is Puro Football that has the D60 News, so that would be a local newspaper. It's a local newspaper also in the local majority language as well. So yes, we're exploring those options, and we will have that in place when we...
People's Voice.
Yeah, so we'll have those in place when we
What's
start
happening?
the advertisement process.
Yeah, all of those to hit all the potential contractors that are out there.
And it is also important for the board to be aware that when we do this initiative, there is going to be some incremental increased cost for advertising. So when we give you the agenda items, normally we have a line for advertisement with a cost associated. That number is going to increase across the board because we're going to do this for all of our advertisement for bid projects.
Well, as long as everyone is included in the process.
I think if we can get a list of the local publishings that we have that we're going to be using, that would be great.
Can I comment too?
Go ahead, Ms. Gonzalez.
I want to make a comment and then ask a question, because I really salute you for taking this on, Mr. Moulton, because people in the community have come to us several times saying, what projects are you guys doing?
Right.
Are you hiring minority contractors?
Right.
I wish that they were here today, because when we decide to do the publishing, we are doing the publishing. It's just that it's not always accessible, right? And we have to make sure of that. But this is, you're taking it to heart. We want more of our local contractors, our minority contractors, to get those bids. They just got to put in the work, to be quite honest. That's their company, that's their business. They got to put their name in the pot. The second thing, though, and I think it goes into what we worry about, there's always a paywall for people who read the Trib. I got to be subscribed to the Trib if I want to read the whole thing. is it possible to have our bids, do we have a landing page on our website that lists all of our bids? I know some other companies do that where if we can make that link like included in the language of our advertising so that they could access it somehow. I feel like that would be a way to like, not pressure people to like have to be subscribed or have to go get the newspaper, but who can just go on our website to see what we have available and what we're processing right now.
Yes, thank you for that. So the website is another option as well, where we have that information that's free of charge.
Okay.
The requirement is we publish it in a newspaper, but we do want to make sure it is accessible. And as far as the information sharing, if you look to item E, we're going to be hosting 2 contractor workshops. We're changing it up a little bit this year. We're going to do 2 instead of 1. We're going to do them in the boardroom on November 9th, November 16th, but we're also going to have a virtual option for individuals to join where they can learn how to access the district information and know what documents are required to submit bids. We're also going to be doing that in dual language as well.
And as I always do, if it hasn't been done already, can we reach out to some of the local organizations like the Chamber of Commerce, Black Chamber of Commerce, GWDC, Lake County Chamber of Commerce, which also has the Latino Chamber of Commerce, which is housed underneath the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And if there's any way to co-sponsor, to Ms. Gonzalez's point, we know government contracts are sometimes tricky to maneuver, and so as many people as we can get to attend these meetings and understand them. I do want to give credit where credit is due. We have an amazing print shop, so I'm not talking about taking that away, but I know at Gurnee Public Schools, I forget which one, but they are using a local, print shop, right? It's because they're outsourcing that, and they went with the local minority contractor, and they did that by making sure they understood the bid process and made it accessible. So kudos to your efforts, but let's try and make sure that we're partnering with those local groups and organizations so that we can get the word out far and wide. Next up is F, rooftop solar information. It's just an information item. The board also received, information by email about what Ms. Hannah had requested, where these projects were done. We have our student activity report, G.
I got some questions about this activity.
Go ahead, Ms. Hannah.
Okay, I was looking at that, and let me just get to it. Thank you. Okay, I'm looking, the student activity check register. There's a lot of individual names on there, and I just wanted to understand, are they sponsors of something, of some club or activity?
So you look at the check register, typically what happens is it comes up to the principal's account. Sometimes the principals may pay for specific activity, like they may buy food for staff, for professional development or things like that, and we reimburse them that.
Out of the student activity fund?
Out of their principal account, the student activities, correct.
Okay.
It'll come out their personal principal funding account, student activities. They have a principal account.
Okay, and so can we relabel that? Well, I mean, because when I look at student activity, okay, I'm thinking that we shouldn't be we shouldn't be spending the $552 for American Outfitters from the student activities account.
Now that could be T-shirts or supplies or equipments for sports teams or things like that, that it is benefiting the students in that sense.
Okay, okay, that's good, that's good. And so the golf tournament.
Correct, would be a field trip that the students took.
Okay.
And we reimbursing the company or making payment for that field trip.
Okay, now let's go to, what was I looking at? And then, can you all explain the, I'm looking at the Student Activity Fund by purpose?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, the spreadsheet? And what does the minus denote? Why are all the accounts negative?
It's cash. We deal with cash basis cash.
Okay. That's kind of like.
Just bring it back.
Okay, one of the things that I asked that Angela mentioned to you is that we have two different kind of funds that are in the student activities. There are student activities, which are funds that are raised by student activities, but then we also have convenience accounts, okay? So it may be from vending machines in the teacher's lounge, and so those monies are deposited in that, and it could be used for teacher purposes. So there's two types of money that's in what we call our student activity accounts. So that's very important for us to mention. Secondly, you asked the question about why are the numbers negative. They're negative because it's literal cash that we have that's coming in versus what we have when it is a positive number, and all of our cash is a negative. So we just have to think differently when we look at these type accounts. All of our literal cash, because we're collecting the money, right, is going to be negative. When we're looking on the board side, it's a budget number. So that's why it's positive. It's an expense, and I don't want to get into expense and cash and liabilities and all of those things, but it's just simple for us to understand that student activity is literal money. So it's going to be a negative number. Whereas when you see the positive number on the board side, it's a budget.
Okay.
That's the easiest way to explain it.
Right, okay. And there's some mighty big numbers on this spreadsheet that I did not quite understand. Just trying to find one as an example. Like
Lulu Ripberger?
Yeah, that's a good one.
The Lulu Ripberger Trust?
No, that's not the trust. I mean up further, like the theatrical production of $18,855.74.
Now, this money has been over the years. It's not something that comes in one time. So this is the money that we have in the account for the years this account's been in the district.
So it's in the account that the students have this money to take and to put on.
Correct.
A production.
Correct.
Okay.
Or yes.
Okay. And the
Can I put a caveat there?
Please.
The board authorized the business office, if an account is dormant for more than 12 months, we have the ability to transfer those monies. But it was also the board's desire that we notify you that we have the intent to move that money either on the board side or to another activity within the school. So I just wanted to point that out.
Right.
And we're constantly monitoring these accounts for inactivity. And if there is a board initiative like Chromebook repairs, or like we had to pay money to the park district for the gym, swimming pool, then we would transfer those monies for those identified needs.
Okay, and that was one of the things that that I didn't understand too when I was looking at this spreadsheet. If it is student activities, then that comes, and I guess maybe the confusion is the labeling of the funds, okay, because when I look at this, I'm saying, okay, this should only be stuff for students, not principal accounts, not recycling, you know, not locker room upgrades. Okay, you know what I'm saying? And it should be under things that's dealing with students, student activity funds.
Yes, these accounts are for fundraising efforts, whether it's for student activity or convenience accounts. For those where the students, let's say for the IDs, because that's also in here, where they don't have their IDs and they're paying $1. Once it gets to a certain level, again, we transfer those funds over to the board side. Also for purchase of, gym? Uniforms. Once it gets to a certain level, we transfer those monies over to the board side. But it's typically for fundraisers or collections of those sorts. And we're monitoring that, and we're providing a report to the Board of Education. One of the things I also wanted to point out to the board is it's a good question. Many years we were not presenting this information in this format, but we wanted to present a detailed report to the board, not only of the expenses, but we also wanted to reconcile. We wanted to provide you a report with the detailed label of exactly what it was, the category in which it fell, and then reconcile it and balance it. So you'll find that this process that we're giving to you on the student activity side almost mirrors what we're doing on the board side.
Right, and I understand, I do understand that.
Yeah.
Okay, but if John Q. Public is looking at this, okay, all they see is negative money.
Yeah.
Okay, and what I'm saying is that is there a way that we could kind of centralize things like principal accounts? Why should they be in the student activity funds? You understand? Because we have everything. We got community health charities. We got staff appreciation. We have academic affairs. We got we got scholarships. That's okay. We got senior leadership team. We got superintendent discretionary funds. Everything coming out of the student activity. And if it is a matter of just the relabeling of the funds, it's very, very, very confusing.
So can you take that feedback and maybe look at a different reporting structure? Thank you, Ms. Polk. Ms. Wozniak?
I would suggest not renaming the accounts. I would say rename the reports to student and school activity accounts.
That's what,
Or-
thank you, Ms. Wozniak.
Or, you know, because
That's
it's
what
for
I'm
the schools.
talking
I mean, the
about.
Booster Club is in there. Pink Out's in there. I've read these reports a lot, so I know where all these, you know. So ultimately, it goes for the students generally. You know, if it's the PTO is paying, you know, is sending field trips out and stuff. And
Right.
The PTO is doing things for the students.
Right.
So if you maybe just broaden the title.
Thank you.
That's all I was saying.
I had a question.
Ms. Gonzalez?
I had a comment and a question. So thank you, Ms. Polk, for doing this, because I think when we had mentioned like where is the money going to, this is kind of what I wanted to see, and I'm sure other board members too, is like how are we able to impact students and we see the money, like, this is the money for these clubs, these organizations, this is what, students can participate in here. And it mirrors what I participated in college. So, especially at the high school level, I want students to understand how to handle a budget, how to make events happen. The question that I had, and I don't know if it's possible, you don't have to answer right now, but I'm looking at some of these organizations and I'm like, why does math supplies for Brookside equal $5, So is it possible to, especially, that was just a supply line, but if it's an organization, can we start the year for all organizations at the same, level? Is that something that we could look for in future years to incorporate into our budget for students?
This is not money from the district. This is money
that they're collecting.
I know,
Students are
each
collecting,
group
yes.
collected. So
but-
like if the Booster Club is running a
Correct.
The
t-shirt
fundraiser.
sale,
Right.
they get the money
Right.
in this account.
But is it possible for organizations that maybe aren't as popular or as well funded, like, because they are actively, their base is like very active, if it's possible to at least have like a base for those organizations so that the students can, not just have to worry about fundraising, so that they can actually do what, Anime Club does or whatever,
And that was a board initiative some years ago, and so we created $70,000 to give to the schools
Okay.
for field trips and things of that sort. So that's on the board side.
Okay.
Not in student activity or convenience account.
Okay. Thank you.
Perfect. So we have items H, which is just the schedule of investments report. A question?
Not about this one. I wondered if we could just jump back. I know we hit rooftop solar information and we didn't say anything about it. And it's a great report that they've given us here. And I just would throw out the suggestion that maybe we could toot our horn, Waukegan Schools Goes Green. There's been some articles about the new solar field that's going in that we own. And when you talk about $500,000 in savings since 2017, almost $500,000, I just throw out the idea that maybe one of our seniors or somebody in our high school might take on this project of writing an article and giving the information to Mr. Sedin for publication. There's been some things in the New Sun. I mean, these are quite impressive figures. We have solar panels on 7 schools. I don't think a lot of the public know them. We see solar panels on houses in Waukegan. But do they really know that we have 7 schools that have saved over 5 million pounds in coal if we had been burning coal from generated electricity from the power plant? So these are big savings that our schools are doing, and maybe the public isn't even aware of it. Also, that energy efficiency grant that you recently got, the savings that's doing as we put in all these LED lights and stuff. I'm just throwing that out as a possibility. I think we've got some horns to toot with our solar program and what it's been doing for us. So just throwing that out. Maybe we could get somebody to do something like that. Some of our students take on and pull that information together, and maybe some of the kids would start looking at those daily savings that are in each of those 7 schools. Look at the dials to see what's really happening there. Sure. Okay, I just wanted to highlight that for that particular item. Thank you for putting it in there.
Thank you for that suggestion, Mr. Riddle.
Okay, go ahead, President.
And our final item is the treasurer's report. All right, with that, I'd like a motion to adjourn. Motion by Mr. McBride, second by Mr. Riddle. All in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Meeting is adjourned. If we can take 5 minutes and meet back here, or 6 minutes, meet back here at 7:35 to continue with our student achievement meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, did you realize, Jeff, that we were...
How are you? I'm very excited. A 55-minute audio file. Who would not be excited for that?
As long as it comes through nice, audio file.
Yeah, I think we tested it, so I think it should be nice to hear Dr. Brown's voice and my voice.
There wasn't a presentation attached.
There is. We put up,
Do you need to get
I
inside?
think Friday afternoon. Or Monday morning.
Oh, Mr. McBride.
It's on there now.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, it was Friday, Monday morning, I think we put it on there.
Oh, Mr. Riddle.
What I hear
Can you let Mr. McBride in?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I see.
We're stuck.
I'd like to call to order the September 21st, 2021 Waukegan Public School Board of Education Student Achievement Committee meeting. We do have a lengthy presentation on our beginning of the year data. So I am going to ask that we kind of hit the ground running. If we can have a roll call, please.
Mr. McBride?
Yes.
Mr. Little?
Present.
Ms. Hannah?
Yes.
Ms. Callahan-Wozniak?
Yes.
Ms. Leguizamo?
Present.
Ms. Gonzalez?
Present.
President Ewing?
Here, so we do have a quorum. All board members are present. We're going to move to item 3A, which is approval of the meeting minutes of September 21st, 2021.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Wozniak.
Second.
Second by Ms. Leguizamo. Any comments, changes, corrections to the minutes? All in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Minutes are approved. All right, first on the list, we have 4A, which is our Equity and Inclusion Department updates and EEP contract from Director Fields.
Thank you, President Ewing. Good evening, Superintendent, board members, community members, and members of our academic team and operations team. Thank you for being here tonight. My name is Jason Alt. I'm standing in for Deputy Superintendent Dr. Cesario this evening. He could not be with us. So our first item on the agenda, as the President mentioned, is 4A, our Equity and Inclusion Department update and EEP contract requests from our Director of Equity and Inclusion, Ms. Tasia Fields.
All right. Good evening, Board President, board members, superintendent, community, families, and staff. My name is Tasia Fields, and I am the Director of Equity and Inclusion, and I'm here to just share some department updates and some general information about our Equity and Education Partners EEP proposal that I will be seeking approval for. I always like to begin by reminding us that equity is a journey and not a destination. This is an ongoing journey for an indeterminate amount of time that requires our continued engagement. Small changes in our everyday practices can alleviate some issues, while the more systemic change happens over time. So true sustainable change requires our continued examination and reflections of our practices. So this work is ongoing. Next slide. So the slide that you see here has our department goals for this 21-22 school year, and I won't read through all of them, but I will summarize them briefly. Goal 1 is all about understanding and providing clarity around the work of this department, in addition to ensuring that we have alignment to the results of our equity analysis, and cohesion around all department initiatives and the streams of work and resources that come out of this department. That second goal is all around professional development and training, making sure that we're providing support to schools in addition to our district leaders on topics of equity. And goal 3 is all about policy work. So this goal will assist us in creating a more equitable school district by reviewing our district policies and making any revisions to languages and our barriers that are present in our policies. And then the final goal is about improving community engagement, to making sure that our resources and supports that we have available are reaching all students and families.
Can we, if you want to write it down, Ms. Hannah?
And so the next slide is all about our action steps, and so the steps that we're going to take to make sure we are achieving our goal. This is not an exhaustive list, but I did want to highlight some of the current action steps that are taking place. So one thing that you see mentioned a number of times is this continued EEP partnership. The Equity and Education Partners is a group that we worked with last year on our equity analysis. So we want to continue that work to make sure that we are achieving these goals that we have set up here. In addition to our Equity Advisory Council that we have just begun, establishing our school-based equity leaders, equity-based book studies, our new policy review protocol, and designing our policy review tool. In addition to the establishment of our Black Parent Network, we also are going to be having our think tank networking event as well, in addition to some other action steps that you see there. And so in this slide here, this is about the proposal with EEP. And so we recognize that there's definitely some deficits in our district, and in order to rectify them, EEP will be in place to support the work of the department. If you look in the complete proposal that's attached there, some of the highlights would be supporting us in creating an implementation plan to address all of the areas that were brought up in our equity analysis, in addition to providing more professional development, executive coaching and feedback, which has been very beneficial to myself in having that critical thought partner with experts that are already successful in this work, in addition to document creation, such as a school-based equity and inclusion support handbook. And there is an amount listed there, but this is an estimate and it can be less depending on our individual needs. And I'm open for questions. On this last slide, you do see a picture of the book, How to Be an Anti-Racist by Dr. Ibram Kendi. This was our first book study. Our district leadership team and our school administrators received a copy, and I have a copy for you all as well. A very interesting read around, it's about a Black man that reflects on his own ideology around being racist. So it's a really reflective text that our team has really enjoyed reading. So
Are we
any
getting
questions?
the book tonight?
Yes. Yeah, I have copies.
Okay, good. I got a question.
Go ahead.
Ms. Anna.
All of this work, right, is very much appreciated, very much needed in our district. My question, very paramount question, how is this benefiting our students? And are they going to have direct benefits of what you're doing?
Thank you for that question. Yes, that's easy. You know, everything that we do and we put in place is for the benefit of our students. Specifically speaking, when we talk about professional development, that will be for our teachers who have direct contact with our students. I know we just started our Equity Advisory Council, but we will have a student member participate in that as well, because it's very important that we are highlighting our student voices like we did with our equity analysis. So all of this work will definitely have an impact on them, but it's important that we bring them to the forefront of that work as well.
Right, but I hear you.
Okay.
But I'm still not hearing what I guess I want to hear. I want to hear, how is this work going to stop the students from fighting? How is it going to stop the students from being disrespectful? How is it going to stop the students from not attending class?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm talking about, because I have witnessed more education of the adults in our district than I've witnessed the educating of children in our district. And I want to know how is this going to benefit and help the students?
Well, thank you for that. One of our focuses, especially with the equity analysis that we did, is about bringing awareness and developing a racial consciousness among our staff. And in doing that, we will support our staffs in being more culturally responsive, which will assist them in creating a better learning environment. And ultimately, if our environments are more conducive to learning, our students will respond differently. So it is my hope that instead of fighting the example that you gave, they're more engaged with instruction because they feel a sense of belonging. And so we will do that in creating a more equitable learning environment for our students.
Okay.
Does that?
Yeah, I hear it. Yeah,
Okay.
I understand. I understand.
I could say a comment.
I don't want to, I guess, open this can of worms,
Yeah.
but I will. And not really can of worms, because we do have a very lengthy BOI, which is very important for the community as well as the board as far as where our students are. But how have you felt that your work has been embraced, especially as with return to school by our staff?
I think it's been well received. I've got a lot of positive feedback from our initial Institute Day where we gave staff time to really dig into the results of our equity analysis. I actually captured some feedback from staff, and it was very positive, very informative. They really appreciate that this work is happening. There was also some eagerness to get more training, to learn more, and really be a part of the process. So I would say it's been well received. Our staff is definitely ready to get dirty and dig into this work.
Ms. Gonzalez, you had a comment?
Yeah, I had a comment. I want to say kudos, Ms. Fields, for the work that you're doing. I think this is important in the district. I think it's important nationally that districts take this work on, because equity is not just a buzzword. It's, like you said, it's a process, it's a journey. Mm-hmm. This is really complicated, especially for our community. There's a lot of people who get uncomfortable with this conversation, and that's okay. We have a lot of educators who are going through it right now, trying to understand, well, I identify as this and I don't relate to my students, but I also need to hold them accountable because they're acting out in class, like, Ms. Hannah is saying. And we need to understand better the situation that we're engaging with, because it's at multiple levels that, trauma and different stressors and poverty, all these different factors manifest, right? The thing I wanted to say is having been in meetings with you, I know that you're impacting people, and I want people to know from, in the audience and people who are watching at home, that if you think that teaching is only just lecturing at students, it's only grading papers, that's not it. It's really about connecting with students on a deeper level and understanding what their story is. And I know this is working because I have our teachers ask me, how do you identify? Like, should I use Latino? Should I use Latinx? And I'm like, I'd rather be asked that question and have that teacher learn what that means so that they could better connect and be better teachers for their kids. I mean, they're already great teachers, the person I'm thinking about, but it helps, and I see that impact, and I can testify that that's what's going to impact the students. Having that teacher connect with them on a deeper level and feel like their sense of belonging is there.
Thank you. I also want to state that the equity work is just not Tasia's work. Mm-hmm. It's a district-wide initiative. It's a national initiative. It's the board's responsibility. It's the superintendent's responsibility. It's all the directors and the coordinators that sit here. It's the staff. It's our union. It's everyone. So Ms. Fields is not in this on her own. Her job is to organize and ensure that we're speaking horizontally and vertically to ensure that we're doing what's right for all children.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Oh, go ahead, Ms. Hannah. Oh, I'm sorry, that's Ms. Leguizamo. Ms. Leguizamo, final question.
Yeah, so I'm looking at this, the financial piece of this. Have you guys engaged in conversation about a multi-year contract and if there would be an incentive to a multi-year contract?
No, we haven't. We've been taking it slow, but that's something we can look into. Like we said, this is a process, so our needs may change from year to year. So I can definitely reach out to them to see if that's an option that I can present.
Yeah, definitely. I'd like to see what that would look like, especially since this is a journey, right? In a year from now, 2 years from now, you're going to need that support financially. And so this is where, like, as a board member, I'd like to see about how I can financially support this whole initiative and making sure that there's no red tape for you, taking that down and letting you continue with the ball rolling.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Those are my questions, Board President. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we were going to go to the BOY presentation, but there is some good news that I want to give the opportunity to report on, and that's 5A, the 21st Century Community Learning Center grant.
First off, thank you, Tasia, for your presentation. And Tasia has a plan mapped out for not only expanding the work, but expanding the department and having a bigger footprint in the district on how she wants equity to impact WPS 60. So to be continued with Tasia's work, as you guys mentioned, down the road. Yes, thank you, President Ewing. So 21st Century Community Learning Center grant. This is a grant that's not unfamiliar with the district. We've had this grant previously. However, this year, Ms. Tate, our grant writer, applied for the grant and was successfully awarded the grant based on some work that she did collaboratively with some of the principals at the sites where this grant will be impacted. So there's thank you, Ms. Tate. We presented, I don't remember exactly when it was either the summer or earlier this fall, about our intent to apply for the grant, and we found out that we were awarded the grant. There is a presentation attached so you can see exactly the scope of the grant. It's a 5-year grant with a total of $3 million that's going to be impacting 4 different sites in our district. So a lot of great work will be done and come out of that grant. And it's one of those grants that Ms. Tate has been very passionate about. I think she had written it when she was in the district previously. She had a hand in it in her previous role as well. So when she approached us about revisiting this grant, it was a no-brainer for us. So yes.
I would also like to add, I'd like to share with everyone that the term STARS stands for Successfully Targeting and Reaching Students. Our grant was selected for funding. We requested $600,000 for each of the 5 years. And I'm really excited that the full amount that we requested was funded. And so our next step will be to bring on board a project director so that we can begin to coordinate and implement the program. The program's been around a little different from what was in the district before, but programs have been around since 1999.
Absolutely.
So it has impacted quite a few of the administrators who are currently working in the district. So I'm very excited about this opportunity, and I look for wonderful things to happen.
And we are the fiscal agents?
We are.
Yes.
We are.
Yes.
Okay, very good.
We are.
And the program will begin in January of 2022. And when it begins, we will meet Monday through Thursday for 14 hours per week for 28 weeks. So STARS is back, and I'm really excited about doing the work and making sure that it is actually a 21st century community learning center.
And I know that many students took part in the 21st century.
Yes.
Activities and everything, and so that it's great that we have the grant back. But I didn't have a doubt. I know that every grant that the grant writer, Ms. Tate, goes for, she gets because of her expertise.
I'd like to thank Ms. Tate as well as all of those who contributed. As many know, I am a proud product of the STARS program. Yes, from middle school through high school, having it be one of my first jobs. And so I know the impact and the difference that it has made in the lives of students. And I'm glad to see it return to District 60. And I know this was also one of the things that me and the superintendent, as well as the board, but I know since I got on, has been trying to figure out how do we provide both extended day and extended year opportunities to our students, because we know that they need it. And so the fact that this will be a program that helps to contribute to those efforts is another plus in my book. So again, kudos, and I'm glad to see this return to District 60. And this is another one of those initiatives that we know will make a difference in the lives of students and will help with our efforts to extend the school year and extend the school day so that our students get the services, that they need in order to be able to compete with their peers, no matter where they live. Next up, we are going to, everything else is information, so I do apologize, but they're renewals and common practice. So we are going to drop down this 8 o'clock. The presentation is 55 minutes. It is recorded. It is because, again, we can watch it, you can listen to it, and you will be able to ask questions. Everybody who's speaking is here, but it allows them to get through it, and it makes it for better watchability through our online platform. So because of those two things, it will be presented. Write your questions down, and we will address the questions at the end of the presentation. It is a data dive, which I know the board has been asking for, as well as the community, and it is the first dipstick test that will show us where our students are as it relates to returning to us from the pandemic.
Thank you, President Ewing. Before you play the audio file, Lee, I just want to let people in the audience know that there's an attachment on board docs as well. If you have a computer available, you can pull it up from there as well. Also wanted to thank Dr. Brown and his team. And when I say team, it's him and one other individual that spent a lot of time and energy compiling all this information. And this year was a little unique because of the assessments that we traditionally take during school years were postponed, delayed, et cetera. So there was much more information for him to kind of decipher this year. So tonight we're going to be looking at really 3 different sets of assessment data. We're going to be looking at SAT, IAR, and NWEA. And we're going to be drawing comparisons between our students' most recent performance on those assessments and how they performed on these assessments pre-pandemic. So one of the things we've been trying to capture as an academic team is prior to our students' learning being disrupted as a result of the pandemic, how are they performing in years prior? Now that they've had a year and a half of, in some cases, remote or in-person instruction, or hybrid instruction, I should say, how are they performing now? So you're going to see a comparison across multiple years to kind of give us a snapshot of where we are. Our goal is to better understand, of course, the impact of the pandemic on our district as a whole, gain an understanding of how our students were performing pre-pandemic versus post-pandemic, and then, of course, to better align our resources to help us meet the needs of our schools and our students. Typically, when we do this BOI presentation, we only just focus on the NWEA data because we present the IAR in the spring, we present SAT in the spring at our end of year data presentation. And we usually dive really deep into that NWE data. Due to changes in the several assessment windows, as I mentioned by ISB, there's a lot of data that we had to sift through here. So we're going to be doing an overview of these 3 different assessments. On top of that, there were 2 new NWEA assessments that we took this year that we haven't taken previously. Our NWEA Science, which was new, and our NWEA Reading Fluency, which was new. Okay, so in addition to the typical NWEA assessments, local assessments that we usually dig into, we have 2 more assessment pieces that are a part of that puzzle as well, that we're going to share some data there as well. Dr. Brown will speak more to some of the changes to our testing schedule and what was tested and when, et cetera, when you'll hear it in the presentation. We realize that this deck is a lot to unpack. There's a lot of information here. And at the request of the superintendent, we're going to take this a step deeper and dig into the SAT, the IAR, the NWA, not only by school, but by demographic, et cetera, so we can analyze it further, not only from an ASAP team, but so schools also have the ability to share that data with their stakeholders during their state of the school addresses that we typically do in the fall. And one of the requests from the superintendent this year is that outside of having a traditional state of the school address, that the principals record their presentations, their data presentations, so we can upload those on the school-specific websites. So if you are a parent or community member that lives in that neighborhood of that school and you want to look at that school's particular data, you can go to their website. You don't necessarily have to come in person to the state of the school address. You can download and listen to pull the file from the district website or the school website as well. To provide the level of depth that we're looking for each one of these assessments this evening would have really doubled the length of our presentation. So we understand how important that information is, and we'll get it to the board and our schools as soon as possible. But I think the data that you see tonight will be a good overview of kind of where we are, where we've been, how our students have been performing, again, pre-pandemic versus now. And keep in mind that the data that you see tonight is just one piece. There's just one set of data that we can use to kind of diagnose the unfinished learning that's taking place in the district. Probably the most important data, even more important than this, is the day-to-day teaching and learning data that teachers generate in their classrooms on a daily basis. So we can look at state assessment data, we can look at local assessment data, but that formative assessment data that teachers really generate in their classrooms day to day is what really drives some of the instructional shifts that they make as they try to determine what it is that needs to be retaught and the skills that need to be refined. That said, it is a lengthy file. Again, you should have access to the presentation. It's a 55-minute audio file. Dr. Brown and I went through it quite slow, so you can try to digest and interpret as you go. And again, if you have any questions, save them till the end, and we'd be happy to answer them. Go ahead, Lee.
I believe it started. Good evening, Superintendent Placencia, President Ewing, members of the board, and Waukegan community. I am Dr. Jonathan Brown, Director of Assessment and Data, alongside
Dr. Jason Null, Associate Superintendent.
Although our nation is still in the midst of the COVID pandemic, we began to cautiously welcome students and staff back to the classroom last spring. Since that time, the state of Illinois has required all schools to resume the administration of state assessments of student learning. Waukegan Public Schools has also resumed the administration of local district assessments of learning. Tonight, we will provide an update on current measured levels of academic achievement for students enrolled in grades kindergarten through 12. As mentioned previously, the Illinois Department of Education required the listed assessments to be given either in the spring of 2021 or the fall of 2021. We chose to administer the IAR, Illinois Assessment of Readiness, State SAT, and the DLM last year, while the Access for ELs, Illinois Science Assessment, and Kids Assessments were administered this fall. The district assessments of NWEA MAP, CIAs, and College Board PSATs were or are also being administered this fall. The PSAT assessments for grades 9 through 11 will be given on October 26th, while grade 8 students will take the exam in December. For today, we will focus on assessments for which we have received scores. ISB's SAT and IAR, and the district assessments NWEA MAP, reading, math, science, and reading fluency. It is important to note that during the 2021 school year, ISB provided 2 opportunities for students to participate in the state SAT. In the fall of 2020, the then seniors that did not have the opportunity to test during their junior year participated. In the spring of 2021, the then juniors resumed the regular schedule of taking the SAT.
Throughout this evening's presentation, you may hear specific terms used frequently as we share the results of our achievement data. This slide provides the definition of some of those terms. Over slide, baseline data, BOI, MOI, and EOI. Our presentation will focus on 3 questions in the light of the pandemic. First, how are students performing overall in reading, math, and science? How are students in K-3 performing in reading? And what supports are planned for students as a result of the pandemic? Student performance data will be presented starting with the high school, then followed by grades 2 through 8, followed by grades A through 3. In the next few slides, I will be discussing previously shared information related to research and national trends on unfinished learning related to the COVID-19 pandemic in the areas of math and reading. The data we will be reviewing this evening substantiates some of these findings when we look at current student performance compared to pre-pandemic years. When we look at reading, national trends suggest that the percentage of students ready for grade level work has decreased nationally, and the percentage of students more than 2 grades below grade level has increased nationally. As we can see here, the same applies for students in the area of math, with our students at the elementary level being impacted the most. Our challenge as a district is to close that gap as quickly as possible and get the majority of our students performing back on grade level. Again, more information that speaks to the unfinished learning that students are experiencing in reading in the primary grades and how unfinished learning in math has impacted all grades. When we look at other characteristics of our district, we see the impact of unfinished learning is more prevalent in districts like Waukegan than perhaps in other areas. Our district is a majority minority district. Our district serves a number of low-income families, and our district has high numbers of BL and EL students, etc. Couple all of this with other factors related to mental health and trauma that could potentially impact our students, we have our work cut out for us as a district.
Now, let's start with the state SAT performance. The state SAT is the only official version that will fulfill graduation requirements for students in Illinois. The test includes questions that focus on science, social science, math, reading, and writing. Students take the SAT in the spring of their junior year, resulting in opportunities to send their scores to prospective colleges for admission. Current trends are that many schools no longer rely on the SAT or ACT for admission decisions, but welcome scores from those that want to send them. The 2 main scores reported are scores for the math section and scores for the evidence-based reading and writing section. As with all state assessments, performance levels are used to designate which scores are at the level of meeting or exceeding standards. For the state SAT, a minimum score of 540 meets the standards on both ELA and math sections. On the math section of the SAT, since 2017, approximately 10% of Waukegan juniors have met or exceeded state standards. This includes the seniors that took the test in the fall of 2020 prior to students returning for in-person instruction. In the spring of 2021, over 900 students returned to participate in the state SAT. At that time, the percentage of students meeting or exceeding standards dropped to half the amounts from previous years, and nearly 3/4 of the students scoring in the lowest category of partially meets. This is an increase of 13% from the previous year. On the ELA section of the SAT, since 2017, at least 12% of Waukegan juniors have met or exceeded state standards. This includes the seniors that took the test in the fall of 2020 prior to students returning for in-person instruction. In the spring of 2021, the percentage of students meeting or exceeding standards dropped again to half the amounts from previous years. The 2021 juniors are also students that did not have the opportunity to participate in a state PSAT the previous year due to COVID cancellations and prior exposure to the SAT materials is important. Next, we will review Illinois Assessment of Readiness, or IAR, performance. The IAR is administered each spring to students in grades 3 through 8. It consists of two parts, math and ELA. Student scores are divided into 5 possible performance levels, of which the top 2 are met or exceeded standards. Due to COVID, the spring 2020 administration was canceled, but many students did return to school in the spring of 2021 for instruction and to participate in the state-required IAR administration. On the IAR math test, from 2015 to 2018, approximately 13% of students met or exceeded state standards. In 2019, that increased to a high of 16% of students meeting or exceeding standards. Following the return to school for testing in the spring of 2021, that percentage dropped to 8%, half of the 2019 total. In addition, the percentage of students scoring in the lowest performance category did not meet increased to 46% of students in grades 3 through 8. On the IAR ELA test, from 2015 to 2018, approximately 16% of students met or exceeded state standards. In 2019, that increased to a high of 19% of students meeting or exceeding standards. Following the return to school for testing in the spring of 2021, that percentage dropped to 12%. As with the math test, the percentage of students scoring in the lowest performance level did not meet increased to a high of 41% of students in grades 3 through 8. As a recap, for our state assessments, the state SAT performance in math had remained steady at 10%, but dropped to half the levels of the previous year in 2021. The state SAT performance in ELA had remained steady at approximately 12%, but dropped to half of the levels of the previous year in 2021. State IAR 2021 results show the percentage of students meeting or exceeding is less than half of the levels of 2019 in math and nearly half of the levels in 2019 in ELA. Spring 2021 students testing in grades 3, 4, and 11 did not have prior recent exposure to high-stakes testing materials. Our local district-level assessments are utilized to give us a sense of where student performance is at a moment in time prior to the spring state assessments. Scores are able to be used at the individual student level as well as school and district levels as additional data points that can inform curricular decisions. These are additional data points used alongside curriculum and class-based assessments and assignments to help gauge how students are performing. NWEA is an adaptive test that allows students that are performing above grade level or below grade level to demonstrate what they understand and can do. The results in this BOY presentation are presented relative to national norms. Students in grades K through 8 test with NWEA in math, reading, and science. Millions of students across the nation participate in NWEA assessments, so national comparisons can be made. Results are divided into 5 performance levels: high, high average, average, low average, and low, with corresponding percentile levels. Students that score in the 70th percentile or above are more likely to score in the meets standards area of our state assessments. Students that score in the average or above levels are very likely to access grade level content with few additional supports needed. Students that score in the low average and low levels are more likely to need additional supports to access grade level content. The following results will be presented for fall testing windows. where students start the school year. We will look at results across the district for grades 2 through 8 and grades K through 3, both by language of instruction. Lastly, data gathered while students were in remote instruction are presented, but should be interpreted with caution. Evidence gathered, as well as feedback during and after the testing window, detail multiple instances of students receiving additional assistance during testing that may have influenced results. The year labels for these slides reference school year ending dates, as in 2017 depicts school year 2016-2017. Results from the fall administration of the NWEA math test in English show an increase in the percentage of students scoring in the top 2 performance levels between school year 2017 and school year 2020, the last year of in-person testing prior to COVID. While school year 2021 data shows an enormous increase in the percentage of students performing in the top 3 performance levels, many staff members believe that the results may show the influence of inappropriate additional supports being provided to students while remote testing from home. Upon our students' return to in-person instruction in the fall, student performance on the fall NWEA math test in English shows a drop from 20.5% to 12.9% of students performing in the top 2 performance levels. In addition, we again see an increase in the percentage of students scoring at the lowest performance level, indicating a high need for additional supports for these students. Since the introduction of NWEA assessments in Spanish, we have been able to more strategically and accurately assess student learning. Results from the fall administration of the NWEA math test in Spanish show a decrease in the percentage of students scoring in the top 2 performance levels between school year 2019 and school year 2020, the last year of in-person testing prior to COVID. While the school year 2021 data again shows an enormous increase in the percentage of students performing in the top 3 performance levels, many staff members believe that the results may show influence of inappropriate additional supports being provided to students while remote testing from home. Upon our students' return to in-person instruction this fall, student performance on the fall NWEA math test in Spanish shows a drop from 16% to 7.9% of students performing in the top 2 performance levels. On the math test in Spanish, we see a fairly large increase in the percentage of students scoring in the lowest performance level, again indicating a high need for additional supports for those students. NWEA math assessments for kindergarten and first grade students were first made available last year, but very few were able to test due to remote circumstances. Results from the fall administration of the NWEA math tests in both English and Spanish, along with other fall assessments, will be used as a baseline for future comparisons in our return from COVID. In kindergarten, approximately 30% of students in English and 17% of students in Spanish scored in the top 2 performance levels. In first grade, approximately 14% of students in English and the same in Spanish scored in the top 2 performance levels. After a very disruptive first year of formal instruction in kindergarten, more than 40% of students in first grade show a high need for additional supports in mathematics. Now, our NWEA reading results. Results from the fall administration of the NWEA reading test in English show a slight increase in the percentage of students scoring in the top 2 performance levels between school year 2017 and school year 2020, the last year of in-person testing prior to COVID. Again, here, fall of school year 2021, data show an enormous increase in the percentage of students performing at the top 3 levels but many staff members believe that the results may show the influence of inappropriate additional supports being provided to students while remote testing from home. Upon our students' return to in-person instruction this fall, student performance on the NWEA reading test in English shows a drop from 24.2% to 19.6% of students performing in the top 2 performance levels. This drop is not as large as what was seen in our IAR results. Lastly, we again see an increase in the percentage of students scoring in the lowest performance level, indicating a high need for additional supports for those students. Results from the fall administration of the NWEA reading test in Spanish shows a decrease in the percentage of students scoring in the top 2 performance levels between school year 2020 and this year, approximately 8%, and an increase in the percentage of students scoring in the lowest performance level. Results from the fall administration of the NWEA reading test show in kindergarten approximately 18% of students in English and 28% of students in Spanish scored in the top 2 performance levels. In first grade, approximately 14% of students in English and 30% of students in Spanish scored in the top 2 performance levels. Nearly half of students tested in first grade in English and 33% of students tested in Spanish show a high need for additional supports in reading. Now our NWEA science performance. The use of the NWEA science test is new for our students and is paired to provide additional information predicting student performance on the state ISA assessment, the Interim Science Assessment. The ISA assessment is required for students in grades 5, 8, and 11. So students currently in grades 4 through 5 and 7 through 8 are participating in the NWEA administration. This being the first administration of the assessment, it will serve as a baseline measure of fall performance. We see that approximately 22% of 4th and 5th graders are scoring in the top 2 performance levels. In grade 7, approximately 17%, and in grade 8, approximately 19% of students are scoring in the top 2 performance levels. These are new tests for our students, with curriculum leaders exploring how well these results reflect what is seen in the classroom. With between 30 to 40% of students scoring in the lowest performance level, it will be important to look closely at these results and how they may help to inform future instruction. Ensuring that all students are reading on grade level by the end of grade 3 has been an important district goal. During remote instruction, students were asked to participate in online remote assessment of their oral reading skills. To aid teachers in this, NWEA's Map Fluency Assessment was introduced. NWEA Reading Fluency. It was introduced during the 2021 school year to assess remotely and more efficiently. Map Reading Fluency is an adaptive universal screener and progress monitoring assessment of early reading that can also be used with older students at risk of reading difficulty. The test is available in both Spanish and in English, and student performance levels are based on grade level expectations. All students were assigned the adaptive oral reading test, which directs some students into oral reading passages and others into precursor foundational skills based on their performance on a classifying task at the sentence reading level. Students can take the assessment in approximately 20 minutes, either individually or in groups, using a headset with a microphone. Here's a graphic that shows the Map Reading Fluency test process. Students who are assigned the adaptive oral reading test after a picture book or graphic novel warm-up must pass the sentence reading fluency measure to be promoted to passage reading, as shown by the solid green arrow. Passing this measure requires getting at least 15 items correct with an accuracy level of 75% in 2 minutes. Students assigned adaptive oral reading who do not pass the sentence reading fluency measure will be routed to foundational skill items as shown by the red arrow. Younger students who are assigned the foundational skills only test that do well in the phonics section will be administered the sentence reading fluency as their last test, as shown by the green dotted arrow. Although the map reading fluency test provides score details on all sections of in the graphic, the presentation today will focus on the adaptive oral reading results and decoding results. Students in grades K through 3 use their Chromebooks to interact with questions and passages reading aloud as needed. Results show that 20% of students tested in grades K through 3 were promoted to the oral reading portion of the test. 80% of those students were routed to the foundational skills portion of the test. It is expected at the beginning of the year that students in kindergarten and first grade will likely route to the foundational skills aspects of Map Fluency, as they are not likely to read connected text. Approximately 5% of our first graders tested into the oral reading aspect of Map Fluency, along with 22% of second graders and 58% of third graders. The test is not given in Spanish to third grade students due to the need to prepare them for state testing in the spring, which is only in English for the ELA test of IAR. Beginning with students that were routed to the foundational skills aspect of the test, results are presented by grade level and by test language. There are some differences in how reading is taught in English and in Spanish. Recall that only a portion of the population will be represented here based on where they are scoring on the test. In the top right of the slide, you will see the performance level coding in terms of grade level expectations for that time of the year. Specifically, what a student is ready to learn is detailed in later slides. In kindergarten, half of the students tested in English and 80% of the students tested in Spanish are meeting or exceeding grade level expectations at this time. In first grade, half of the students tested in English and 42% of the students tested in Spanish are meeting or exceeding expectations at this time. In second grade, 45% of students tested in either language are at the approaching expectation level, with the rest below expectations. In third grade, all students that were routed to foundational skills are scoring in the below expectations level. It is important to note that for grades 2 and 3, it is expected that all students are reading connected text well enough to be routed to the oral reading fluency portion of Map Fluency. Any student falls into the foundational skills portion of the test, any student that falls into the foundational skills portion of the test in grades 2 or 3 will not register as meeting expectations and are likely in need of additional supports in the area of reading. Our goal is to move all second and third graders out of the foundational skills portion of the test. Because teachers need specific information that will help them inform instruction, NWEA Map Fluency scores student performance and places them within levels of instructional readiness. The levels are presented here on the screen and are in order of increasing skill. Within the area of phonological awareness, the percentage of students' scores by grade and level are presented. The arrows on the graphs of kindergarten and third grade depict the pattern of scoring that we are looking for as instruction continues over the course of the year. At the beginning of the year, more students may score in the lower levels of kindergarten, being exposed to rhyming, syllables, and initial sounds. As the year progresses, students should move to where the pattern of scores more reflect what you see in grade 3, with students moving into levels 3 and above. As the year progresses, we would also look to see the count of students reflected in this type of graph to decrease dramatically for grades 2 and 3, but holding to the same pattern as seen in grade 3 here. Students scoring mostly in levels 3 and above. Here is similar data in phonological awareness for the Spanish test. The last section of the foundational skills test that we will cover involves phonics and word recognition. Again, students in grades 2 and 3 are expected to be above foundational skills, so their scores will never show as met or exceeded expectations. Approximately 42% of students in kindergarten met or exceeded grade level expectations at this time, with all others approaching expectations. If students do not make enough progress by the December testing window, it is possible for kindergartners to then score in the below expectations performance level. In the first grade, 46% of English testers and 56% of Spanish testers met or exceeded grade level expectations at this time. 38% of English testers and 27% of Spanish testers are likely in need of additional supports in reading. In second grade, at least 58% of English testers and 31% of Spanish testers may be in need of additional supports in reading, as well as the third graders shown above. Schools will utilize these data points alongside other data to determine appropriate interventions. As with the phonological awareness section, the phonics and word recognition section scores are leveled as well. The phonics section of the test connects the sounds that students hear with printed text. The patterns of student performance in the phonics word recognition section is similar to what we saw in the phonological awareness section. The yellow and black arrows depict the pattern that we want to see over the course of the year. In the beginning of kindergarten, we expect to see most students scoring in the beginning levels of the test, introducing letters and sounds, and few students with experience with decodable words. Over the course of the year, we want to see progress that changes the graph to look more like the third grade graph with most students above level 3. As mentioned with the phonological awareness section, all students in grades 2 and 3 should test out of the foundational skills area by December testing or by the end of the school year. This is student performance in Spanish on the phonics word recognition section. Now we will finish with detailing the performance of students that were promoted to the oral reading portion of the Map Fluency test. The students in blue, 58% of third graders, 22% of second graders, and 5% of first graders are those with scores that we will detail. We will review oral reading rates, oral reading accuracy scores, and literal comprehension scores. This is a table of the same results. top right of the slide, you will again see the performance level expectations with the addition of a pink category. Due to the flexible nature of the test, it is possible for a student to complete the test but not have a score in every section of the test. For the oral reading test, students read passages that are recorded and scored by the computer. There are times when the student may read a grade level or higher passage silently, score very well on the comprehension portion of the test, but have no score as a result on the oral reading rate or accuracy measures because the student read silently. It is also possible for a student to read aloud, but the computer is unable to score the student. In most cases, teachers are able to listen to the recording and provide manual scoring for a student. There are yet still times when that cannot happen and the teacher is left without a reading rate and accuracy score for a student. The pink sections reflect students with a combination of desired scenarios, and we will work to limit those students as much as possible, those scores as much as possible. Sorry. They are included here to aid in district level interpretation of performance so that we're aware of how many students did not receive a full score. Students that are promoted to the oral reading section of the test while in kindergarten are automatically scored as exceeding expectations. We are looking to identify as many of those students as possible. Students scoring in the oral reading section of the test while in first grade at the beginning of the year are scored as meeting or exceeding expectations only. The expectation changes with winter testing as we progress through the year. Students in second and third grade are expected to be promoted to the oral reading section of the test and therefore can score in any of the performance levels. This fall, 76% of our second grade testers in English met or exceeded expectations, while 52% of students testing in Spanish met or exceeded expectations. Over a quarter of Spanish testers did not have a registered reading rate. In third grade, 58% of students met or exceeded expectations at this time, and 17% did not have a registered reading rate. Overall, in grades K through 3, 60% of students met or exceeded expectations at this time, with up to a quarter of students in this section that may still be in need of instructional supports. In terms of oral reading accuracy, students that are promoted to the oral reading section of the test while in kindergarten or first grade must achieve a minimum level of accuracy to meet expectations. In the first grade, 62% of students met or exceeded accuracy expectations at this time in English, while 26% met or exceeded accuracy expectations in Spanish. The counts in these categories are small and will change as students complete testing. In second grade, 48% of English testers and 28% of Spanish testers met or exceeded expectations at this time. At least 16% of English testers and 26% of Spanish testers are likely in need of additional supports in reading. In third grade, 51% of testers met or exceeded expectations at this time, with at least 16% being likely in need of additional supports in reading. Overall, in grades K through 3, of the students that were promoted to the oral reading portion of the test, 47% met or exceeded reading accuracy expectations at this time. At least 17% of students may be in need of additional supports in reading. Those figures could change due to 19% of the students with no accuracy score. Lastly, after students read passages and with their reading rates and accuracy scores calculated, they are asked questions to test comprehension of each passage read. Not only should a student read fluently, but also comprehend what they're reading. Overall, 64% of students tested in the oral reading, testing in the oral reading section of Map Fluency met or exceeded grade level expectations in literal comprehension. Second and third graders that are scoring in the below expectations area are likely in need of additional supports. The next step that schools typically take is to look at each data point for a student together to determine which additional supports are appropriate. For our district assessments, overall in math, student fall performance dropped significantly from fall of 2019 levels to lows of 13% meeting or exceeding in English and 8% in Spanish for grades 2 through 8. And I'm sorry, that's not meeting or exceeding, that's in the top 2 performance categories. Overall, in reading, student fall performance also fell from fall 2019 levels by 5 and 8 percentage points in English and Spanish for grades 2 through 8. Nearly half of students tested in first grade in English and 33% of students tested in Spanish show a high need for additional supports in reading, according to Map Growth. After a very disruptive first year of formal instruction in kindergarten, more than 40% of students in first grade show a high need for additional supports in mathematics. This year, we will continue to measure student oral reading performance in grades K through 3.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Now I'd like to move on to speak a little bit about the academic and SEL supports that are in place, given the data that was just presented. Although we were unable to capture valid measures of student performance on a large scale over the course of the last year or so, it does not mean that student performance isn't measured and, more importantly, acted upon. Educators have missed having access to large snapshots of student performance, but those data are not what drives instruction in the classroom, nor should they be. Educators across the district understand that the most effective way to help students progress in their learning is to engage in formative assessment practices. Practice of formative assessment is defined as a process used by teachers and students during instruction that provides feedback to adjust ongoing teaching and learning to improve students' achievement of intended instructional outcomes. The next few slides speaks to the strategies that teachers can use to formatively assess students and some of the district-sponsored resources and tools that assist with that process. In addition, the board has also recently approved the purchase of tutoring platforms such as TutorMate, Varsity Tutors, Paper, etc., to assist students in the classrooms and outside of the classroom when individual support is needed. If you look at this slide, purple shading denotes specific tools that are typically created and used formatively by the teacher during the course of regular instruction. There's entry slips, exit tickets, performance tasks, quizzes, daily feedback, EM4, and EM4 ACAs, etc. The remaining are assessments themselves or intervention programs that have assessment tools embedded within them that allow teachers and students to track progress and provide data that can be used to determine next steps. There are math and reading assessment tools available in both English and Spanish. Again, purple shading denotes specific tools that are typically created and used formatively by the teacher. The remaining are assessments themselves or intervention programs that have assessment tools embedded within them that allow teachers and students to track progress and provide data that can be used to determine next steps. There are math and reading assessment tools available in English and Spanish. Some aspects, such as talk the talk, are required daily. Similar slide with the purple shading denoting some of the specific tools, assessment strategies, and then the tools to the right, again, allow teachers to track progress and provide data that can be used to determine next steps. There are math and reading assessment tools available in both English and Spanish. I should denote these slides were in progression by level. So this last slide was at the high school, this slide prior was the middle school, and this slide previously was elementary school. Apologies. My apologies for that. From the MTSS and SEL perspective, the MTSS SEL framework was developed in order to create an SEL-focused support plan that is differentiated developmentally and culturally in order to address the transition from remote to in-person instruction. This plan incorporates all of our district's resources, such as Calm Classroom, Second Step, Panorama Playbook, PBIS practices, as well as outside resources to address mental health and trauma. In these lessons, students, staff, and families discuss and learn about cultural responsiveness, equity, inclusion, community, relationship skills, responsible decision-making, self-awareness, self-management, and social awareness. You can click on the links on that slide to access the playbooks. In addition to our MTSS SEL framework, the district has a menu of supports both internally and externally that can also be utilized. This slide depicts a list of site-based supports teams that are available in buildings, as well as outside or external support programs that the district has that are available to many of our buildings as well. So where do we go from here? There's a lot of information that was shared with you as it relates to data, and I want to reiterate the fact that Dr. Brown mentioned several times that these are just one set of data points that can be used to help inform instruction and help teachers develop plans for reteaching, identify priority standards, identify interventions, etc. As a Department of Data and Assessment, we are going to continue to utilize IAR as our primary assessment source for determining student performance by looking at end-of-year performance to end-of-year performance comparison, so EOI to EOI. NWEA will follow the same suit, using EOI comparisons from EOI to EOI, in addition to student-level detailed data. Curriculum-based common assessments will be paired with IAR and other available assessment data. Advanced goal setting at all levels, the district, school, grade level, classroom, and student will also be utilized to help recover some of the unfinished learning that we are seeing in this information as well. That concludes our assessment presentation. Now I would like to move on to our 5 essentials survey results for the 2021 school year.
Can we pause there then? I guess.
This first slide just talks essentially about what is.
Because the second one deals with 5 essentials, right? Which is unrelated to the dive that we did. I want to.
Board President, I could also say, if due to time, I could take some soup time and we can cover the 5 essentials. It's up to the board, depending on the flow.
I will say, I mean, what we just witnessed and went through in lengthy detail is what I think we all know, is that our students struggled during the pandemic and during remote learning. And I think it's very sobering as we look at these results and some of the gains that we saw that we've lost as our students have returned to us, that we now have our dipstick, we now have our tests, we now know where we are, and all efforts and emphasis has to be on how do we improve. And so while we want to highlight the issue, and I don't want to gloss over it, I mean, it was very sobering to look at the results and what it is that we see and the impact that we knew, but to now have a number to it. So I know that one of the things when we talked about ESSER funds and when we talked about some of the money is we were making assumptions. Well, now we don't have to make assumptions. It's because we know where our needs are, and the board is looking for a plan as to how we put those resources to address it. We always hear the term about the achievement gap. And so the achievement gap, I always get disappointed when I hear that term, is because what it's not an achievement gap, it's typically an opportunity and an access gap. And what we have to do is figure out how to provide more opportunities and access to our students. And so if there are specific questions that need to be answered tonight, I will take the time to do so. but it is always almost 9 p.m. And I know personally for me, I want to sit with this data and I want to sit with the enormous responsibility that we all have before us as it relates to changing these numbers. So, are there any specific questions that need to be answered this evening, Ms. Wozniak?
The attachment that is on board docs does not have all the student numbers.
The numbers, yeah.
Can we get that?
Yeah, we can have Nick send the updated presentation out. We none of the slides are the same. It's just missing some of the number pieces, like
Right.
you mentioned on
the student counts.
Yeah, percentages, but not numbers in some of the charts.
I also just want to inform the board, we will resend this to you. We are going to also send this to all of our parents, all of our staff. The data is very new. The testing window just closed. I had our team crunch this data as rapid as possible. There's still more crunching that needs to be done as far as race, gender. They're working on that as we speak right now, but I thought it was really important that we do get that dipstick to see where we need to apply supports and resources. So I do want the board to know that we are going to get in front of this, not behind us, be very transparent to where we are as a community, the instructional loss that we have taken due to the pandemic. So staff, students, and all stakeholders in our district will be getting this information within the next week.
I think as President Ewing mentioned, that this is a great starting point for us to really understand what we predicted was probably going to be the result anyway. Now that we have this as a baseline, it's going to really allow us to dig deeper into the results, not only at school by school level, but continuing to drill down teacher by teacher, classroom by classroom, student by student. And if you look at the data, the summary slides really help give you a good picture. If you don't want to sift through all the charts and the graphs, look at the summary slides. They really paint the picture of what is happening on those assessments. So that'll be a good starting point for those of you that want to really look and see how this has impacted our students in the district. Prior to this, I hope you also saw that in years pre-pandemic, our students were making some pretty significant progress on IAR and some of these other assessments. So our goal is obviously to get back to that point where students were increasing their scores, the number of students that were proficient every year. But we first have to address this current new first baseline data that we have, not only at the district level, but at the school level as well.
I saw Ms. Leguizamo with her hand, and then I just have
I think it was me.
Okay, Ms. Wozniak.
I'll go after them. A couple more questions. I didn't understand the difference between phonological awareness and phonics word recognition, and and the counts. We only have 346 third graders in the phonics word recognition. Shouldn't there be like 1,000, 1,200 students taking that test?
Yeah, I'll have Dr. Brown come up and answer the questions related to that particular assessment.
Any of those tests.
As we mentioned,
it didn't seem like there was enough students taking these
Well,
map reading tests.
Can I ask my question? Because I think it goes into Charlotte's. They have to they have to pass the first part of the test to get to the oral part, right? Okay. I think that's why we don't see the bigger numbers. They're not even testing into that part of the test.
Right. That's why if you go back
And then like third graders, they're all below expectations once they even test into this thing?
Because
Go ahead. Go ahead.
and because this also scares me, it's because when we test at the third grade level, our Spanish speakers are forced to take it in English. They have to start testing in English. That may be part of it, but that's what I noted too.
So that's true. They test in English because of the state test being in English. But for second and third graders, they're expected to be reading connected text at the second and third grade level. And so if they don't score high enough on the test to where the test gives them connected text and they're having to work in the foundational skills level, that's all below where they're supposed to be, and that's why it doesn't score them as meeting expectations, because it would be a false sense of.
Well, yeah, but then why aren't they like, not even below, why aren't they the light pink color that we saw in some of these other categories?
With the light pink, I was trying I created a new category so that we didn't throw those numbers away, because they're still partial scores and we still needed to know about those particular students. I was trying to make sure that if you look at the green and blue slide, that all of those students are accounted for in all of the other slides. So the green portion are all the phonological awareness and phonics students. So those counts should add up to that. And then the blue section are the oral reading, the higher level connected text folks.
Okay,
I hope that helps.
a little bit.
Are there more questions? I know you said you had a couple, Ms. Wozniak. Otherwise, I'm going to go to Ms. Leguizamo. Okay. Ms. Leguizamo?
I have 3 questions. Keep it simple, hopefully. Now, so I was wondering, with all of this testing, have you guys identified which are the schools that have the lowest performing students in regards to math and reading?
So that's the next layer that we were talking about, drilling down to get these school level reports to principals. That's the next layer of this. So digging deeper in this district-wide data to get the school level reports that show us, particularly at each school, not only which students, what grade level, but which, gender, which demographic, and where they're performing is going to be the next layer of this.
What Dr. Nault is stating is they're just not there yet. They haven't crunched that data yet. They're in the midst of crunching it right now. They did the district overview because the testing window just recently closed. So they're in the midst of crunching that data yet. So they don't have a full set as of yet. That is why it's not being presented to them.
Yeah, it's forthcoming, sir.
And then, so when you provide the updated slides, is that around the time that you'll give us that information? Or okay, all right. Second question. Have you found any sort of correlation that students that are excelling in the tools are also doing well in the testing?
All that list of. So I think what you're referring to, Ms. Leguizamo, is the list that I gave you for the elementary schools, the middle schools, and the high schools. We have a big toolbox there, right, for a lot of things, a lot of resources that teachers can use.
Right, and they go at their pace, right? So I know there's some of them that can just continue to go on and exceed, and I mean, they'll finish a whole entire year's worth of math, right?
Yeah, they're all different. I don't know exactly how they're sequenced and the reports that are generated from each one. But I don't know if Fastbridge is a good predictor of.
Some of those tools are ones that are used for students that need those additional supports. So not everybody is using those tools. But I haven't looked necessarily at who's using those tools and how are they performing on the test. The individual schools might be able to tell you something about, we use this particular tool because we know that it works well with our students. But across the board, I haven't looked at that, because it depends on what the students are needing.
And there's just so many options for intervention tools that we have. So I think the other piece too is that schools are really looking at this data to help them identify some of the intervention groups that they need to establish and create at their schools. It's a way for them to look at that and determine who may need what classrooms may need some push in, and what class students may need to be pulled out for some additional supports. It's a way for them, especially with IAR, to identify some of those learning standards that may not be, if they see a consistent pattern across a particular grade level, that they're not meeting this standard or that particular standard. It's a great way for teachers to reteach and embed that standard back into some of the lessons that they're planning. So they can use the data in multiple ways. And our schools, with the assistance of course, MTSS and the area superintendents, and are really starting to dig into this. And once they get that school level data that we're going to provide with them, and some of them are already dug into the NWA data. But once we get those school level reports to them, it'll be much more clear for each school where they really need to focus. Our schools that have the ESSA designations that have a certain student group that's a priority, like you already know that they're looking at those groups right away. So, there's a wide range of things that they're doing with this information. We're going to give them the information, and then at each school, they kind of make the decision of how they want to determine those supports and interventions that are being provided to kids in the school.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there is a correlation there, because, I mean, that would even give us some predeterminations even prior to the testing, right? So as a district-wide, as we're looking, what does that look like? I think that's maybe a good data point to try to understand if there is a positive or neutral or negative impact there. So that's where I was just kind of trying to see how those tools are impacting the overall final assessment.
And can I ask one question about the tools? When you say how the tools are having an impact, do you mean what specifically about the tools? Because I just want to make sure I'm understanding you correctly, because you're not saying just exposure to online items and being able to manipulate things, are you?
Right.
You're
so,
saying having success with Dreambox, having success with, okay.
Yep,
I just wanted to make
exactly.
sure.
Yep. It's exactly where I'm at. It's, the Carnegie math. So, are they excelling in that? And then you're also seeing that in the testing, or are they not excelling in that? And are you also seeing that in testing? I just think that would be an interesting data point precursor. So last question, and you guys have probably not crunched these numbers yet either, but I was just kind of wondering, have you determined, based off of this beginning of year data, what percentage of students are planned to be retained under the current retention and promotion policy?
Good question. So that's actually a topic that are going to start discussing more in detail now that we have this information, and we'll obviously have to present that information to the board as well. But are there any shifts in some of the criteria that we want to make now that we know that we have this new starting point, this new baseline with our NWEA? Because NWEA is one of the major criteria in the promotion policy and retention policy. So now that we have this baseline data, looking at how many students, if we looked at it today, how many students would potentially be impacted if we use this current data, would be but would be identified as a potential retention or promotion. So that's another piece of this is now that we have the overview, looking at that policy in particular to see if there need to be some shifts made in how we're measuring that for second, fifth, and eighth graders. Third, fifth, and second, fifth, and eighth.
Thank you, Dr. Null. Board President, those were all my questions.
I had a couple more questions.
Go ahead, Ms. Gonzalez.
I will sit with this, I promise. I just, with the NWEA, just a comment that I wanted to understand a little better. When we, I think Dr. Brown, you were the one who said it, that the students may have in 2020, that's a little bit better due to inappropriate interventions or supports at home. Now, I don't want to assume what that means, although I can, copy paste and Wolfram Alpha, but is it possible that we just saw better results because a lot of kids didn't take the test? Not, I don't know how that might have affected the percentages, but.
When the counts are really small, that's always a possibility.
Okay.
But because of all the feedback we received and when the students take the test, they're recorded so that the teacher can hear them read. Yeah. And if you hear an adult reading or something else, then it makes a difference.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to clear that up because I'm like, I don't want to assume, but, and then my other question was, when we think of, the slides about the where we want the students to be at in the like reading fluency tests, do we know, and I don't want to assume that this may be the case, but do we know the experience of our teachers K through 5, the experience levels? Like, do we have most of our veteran teachers in like teaching those kids? Do we have new teachers? Is there like high turnover for teachers in those grades?
We don't have that information now. We can find out the level of experience that teach the primary grades. If you want.
We also give autonomy to principals to decide, especially at the elementary and middle school levels, what teachers they feel do best with certain kids. Certain schools like Greenwood and others loop kids for 2 years so that kids have the same teacher.
Yeah.
So that varies from school to school, and we do give principals autonomy because they know their teachers the best.
Okay.
Also, teachers do also fill out preference sheets of what grades they want to teach per union. Am I correct?
Okay.
Just one real quick question. With all the emphasis that we're going to be putting on bringing up our children who have fallen behind, I think we need to also be aware that some of them haven't fallen behind, and those teachers have somehow to challenge those kids, to continue to challenge those kids and not forget about them, because they can obviously become bored and problem children instead of children that can excel. So I hope that emphasis can be kept there for the ones that have done well, and we still have some that have done very well. Thank you.
Good point, Mr. Riddle.
And that's part of the reason why we try to break the data out into so many groups, so that we can be sure to identify those top groups so that they can see them.
Right. Thank you.
So with that, they just leave, and I'll keep going. Is the achievement gap real? Or is it racist? And I think that the answer is that it is both, right? And so how do we assess our students so that we understand where they are? And how do we use this data to improve where they are, but also to realize that our students are coming out of a pandemic? And while I do want to see this data move, I think we've identified, at least, and I'm not speaking for the superintendent, maybe I'm not even speaking for the board, speaking for me, and that if we've committed to extended day and extended year, and what I mean by that is giving our students more opportunity and more access, that is what will move the data. Our students were disproportionately impacted by this pandemic, and therefore the results, nobody should be surprised that they're disproportionate as it relates to our students, and we know what our demographics are. And so I hope that we go forth understanding the enormous task that we have before us. We will continue to assess our students, but it's not to make them feel less than or other than, or to make them feel like they don't know, but it is to understand how we can better support them and make sure that they're moving and progressing through their academic journey. It's because we know that the impact that this pandemic has had on our students will be long lasting, and we need to mitigate that impact as much as we possibly can as a Board of Education, as administration, and as teachers in that classroom. So thank you for your work. We look forward to the other data. I'm very interested in how the breakdown is demographically. And so I look forward to that information. With that, I'd like a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I got a motion by Ms. Wozniak, second by Mr. McBride. All in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.